Chapter 558. The scorching heat spread throughout Gray's body. Gray felt as if he was bathed in lava. His skin was crimson red, and the blood vessels all over his body were clearly visible. The powerful medicine was causing drastic changes in his body. Under the effects of the blood dragon medicine, his muscles and tissues became denser. His physical fitness was rapidly improving, and the blood force vortex in his heart was rapidly expanding. His level was rapidly increasing. He had only reached the 3rd level of the desolate level for 2 months. He was only at the beginning stage of the 3rd level of the desolate level. However, he soon reached the middle stage of the 3rd level of the desolate level. If he were to cultivate the blood technique now, he should be able to complete the 2nd cultivation method of the 4th round of cultivation. However, his improvement did not stop there. The effects of the blood dragon medicine did not end there. After reaching the middle stage of the 3rd level of the desolate level, his level was still rapidly increasing. Soon, he reached the late stage of the 3rd level of the desolate level. This rate of improvement had already surpassed the rate of improvement that Francis had experienced when he took the blood dragon medicine a few days ago. With the 2nd metamorphosis, his body was constantly thirsting for nourishment. He would absorb any effective ingredients that could help him improve his strength without any waste. As a result, the effects of one portion of the medicine that he took might be comparable to that of others who took 2 or even 3 portions. After reaching the late stage of the 3rd level of the king level, Gray's improvement did not stop there. He was still improving. Finally, he reached the peak of the 3rd level of the desolate level. To the outside world, the 4th cultivation method of the 4th round of cultivation was close to completion, and he had reached a bottleneck. At this point, Gray's improvement in his level stopped. However, this did not mean that the changes in Gray's body had stopped. There was still a portion of the blood dragon medicine's effect left. Under this effect, Gray's body was undergoing microscopic changes. Originally, although he had the blood beast ability and bloodline, this bloodline was only attached to his body. It had not completely merged with his genes. Now, the bloodline was merging with his genes and becoming a part of his genes. Simply put, if he left behind descendants before the merging, they would not be able to inherit any of the blood beast ability. After the fusion, there was a possibility that his descendants would inherit his bloodline and possess his blood beast abilities. The benefits of this kind of bloodline fusion were not limited to this. After the bloodline was completely fused, the lifespan of the body would be greatly increased. It would jump from the original 100 years to 300 years, increasing one's lifespan by 3 times. The fusion of bloodline and hereditary genes was a microscopic change that was difficult to detect. To the outside world, Gray's improvement seemed to have stopped. However, even if it was a change on a microscopic level, as long as it accumulated enough, it was enough to trigger a macroscopic change. Finally, at some point, the microscopic change triggered a macroscopic change, and Gray's body changed. Ka. All the bones in Gray's body creaked, and the strength of his body suddenly soared. It was not a gradual increase, but a huge increase in strength in an instant. In a very short period of time, his strength had increased by a large margin. As his body increased in strength, the blood force vortex in his heart suddenly spun at an even faster speed. Its volume increased rapidly, and the pressure in the center increased. Then, a drop of bright liquid appeared in the center of the blood force vortex. It was only a drop of liquid, but it emitted an extremely dangerous aura that made one's heart palpitate. The blood force had liquefied. This was a sign of king level. In other words, at this moment, Gray had reached king level. Boom! A terrifying pressure spread from Gray's body. The blood force in Gray's body subconsciously circulated according to the totem of the Thunder King beast. A giant blue beast appeared unconsciously in Gray's mind. The giant blue beast looked like a lizard with horns on its head. Its scales were the size of an adult's palm, and purple lightning flashed around its body. It was like a divine beast that controlled lightning. After a long time, the lightning disappeared, and the divine beast that controlled lightning dissipated. At this moment, the effects of the blood dragon potion were completely exhausted. The burning sensation in Gray's body disappeared, and Gray woke up. What a powerful potion! One bottle actually raised my strength to king level. Feeling his current level, Gray's face was filled with amazement. One bottle of blood dragon potion had raised him from the early 3rd level of the desolate level to king level. It was a full level increase. The potion's effects were simply beyond his expectations. It stinks. An unpleasant stench emanated from his body. Gray looked at his body and saw that his skin was covered in pitch-black stains. Even his clothes were stained by the stains. Naturally, these were not stains from his body. At his current level, his body had an extremely strong immunity and recovery ability. How could there be so many impurities left in his body? In fact, these were broken cells that were constantly broken and reborn during the process of cells transforming and increasing their strength. He took off all his clothes and threw them away, revealing his well-proportioned but not bloated body. Gray took out a bathtub from his purple ring. He used his ice-type ability to create ice and his fire-type ability to heat it into warm water to wash himself. After changing the water, Gray washed his body and put on a clean set of moon-white aristocratic robes. His face was thin, his body was slender, and his hair was as black as ink. Wearing the white aristocratic robes, he had the temperament of a noble young master. However, unlike other noble young masters, he had a pair of extremely sharp eyes. A pair of eyes so sharp that others did not dare to look him in the eye. Being stared at by this pair of eyes was like being stared at by a tiger or a leopard. They could not help but subconsciously look away. According to my estimation, I will need at least another year or so to raise my strength to king level. I didn't expect that one bottle of blood dragon potion would save me a year. Feeling the explosive power that filled his body, Gray sighed slightly. He sighed at the strength of the blood dragon potion and the importance of resources. The cultivation of a blood warrior required a lot of talent, but resources were also indispensable. Only with both talent and resources could one improve at the fastest speed. He himself was the best example. In the early stages, he was severely lacking in cultivation resources. Even if he had the unique second metamorphosis state, his cultivation speed was only comparable to that of a member of the royal family of the Four Kingdoms. But in the later stages, he obtained a large amount of cultivation resources, and his cultivation speed increased at a terrifying rate. He quickly caught up with or even surpassed the members of the royal family of the Four Kingdoms. This was the importance of cultivation resources. Ferlant's alchemy notes must not be given to Master Tulu. The strength of the blood dragon potion made Gray even more afraid of giving Ferlant's potion refining notes to Master Tulu. If possible, he hoped to use his resurrection ability to control a potion refining master and have him refine magic potions for the Fergus family. Of course, such a person must have a deep grudge against him or be an evil person. This was the most basic principle, and Gray did not intend to change it. Thinking of his current cultivation level, Gray could not help but think of another matter. Increasing my strength is a good thing, but I missed the opportunity to consume the blood of a blood beast in the middle stage of the desolation level. Fortunately, I can still make up for it. After many years of observation, Gray discovered that the number of times he could use the metamorphosis state was directly proportional to his body's strength. The higher his body's strength, the more times he could use the metamorphosis state. Of course, the strength of his body did not refer to his defense. It was the most fundamental quality of his body. To a certain extent, it was quite similar to his cultivation level. Because of this, even if he missed the opportunity to consume the blood, he could still make up for it later. Simply put, it could be accumulated. For example, because he had reached the middle stage of the desolation level once and reached the king level once, he could consume the blood twice, not once. How should I use the two metamorphoses? Gray could not help but think about how to use the two metamorphoses. Currently, among the blood he possessed that could be used for the metamorphosis, the demonic sound king beast's blood was one type, the king claw beast's blood was another type, the gem king beast's blood was another type, and the poisonous magical dragon's blood was another type. Among them, the king claw beast's blood could be immediately excluded. Among the blood he possessed, there was the king claw king beast's blood. This was a blood beast whose strength, defense, and speed were at the peak of the same level. Its ability completely covered the abilities of the king claw beast. The poisonous magical dragon's blood would definitely take one of the metamorphoses. After reaching the king level, the first thing he needed to do was to increase the level of his blood. Otherwise, his strength would not be able to move forward at the beginning stage of the king level. After all, the highest blood he possessed was the king level. After reaching the king level, he had already developed this blood to the limit. The poisonous magical dragon would take one of the metamorphoses, and the remaining metamorphoses would need to be generated between the demonic sound king beast and the gem king beast. Gray could not help but carefully consider the abilities of these two blood beasts. The demonic sound king beast's specialty was that its defense was at the peak of the same level. It also possessed the ability to attack with invisible sound waves that did not consume blood energy. The gem king beast's specialty was that it could use gem petrification to increase its defense. After comparing the two, Gray immediately eliminated the demonic sound king beast. The demonic sound king beast's defense was at the peak of the same level. Gray had already obtained it from the king claw king beast. As for the other party's invisible sound wave attack, although it was very special in that it could not be seen and did not consume blood energy, its power was limited against him, who possessed three mixed abilities. Moreover, because it was a physical ability, it should not be able to increase the power of his three mixed abilities. Although the Gem King Beast's power was also limited, it had the ability to use gem petrification, which was an ability that Luli was rather optimistic about. If gem petrification could be combined with metallization, his own defense would increase tremendously. Moreover, the Gem King Beast's ability was an elemental earth-type ability. It could be combined with the three mixed abilities to form a new mixed ability. The only thing that dissatisfied him was that it was only a king-level bloodline. Compared to his current level, the bloodline's level was a little low. I'll use the demonic poison King Beast's blood for the first metamorphosis. As for the second metamorphosis, I won't be in a hurry to use it. In the end, Gray decided on the blood for the first metamorphosis. As for the second metamorphosis, he did not decide on it and did not plan to use it immediately. The Gem King Beast's bloodline level was too low. This made him very dissatisfied, so he decided not to use the second metamorphosis for the time being. Chapter 559. Looks like it's time to ask the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom for Magic Light Blood Fiend's blood. According to Gray's guess, the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom should have Magic Light Blood Fiend's blood. Although Magic Light Blood Fiend's blood were extremely rare, the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom should have obtained some from the Empire ruins over the past 1,000 years. Gray was not worried about offering a price that would tempt the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom. He had gained a lot from the tomb this time, obtaining many silver-tier weapons and materials that could be used to create them. These were all things that the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom would be extremely tempted by. As an organization with many king-class powerhouses, the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom had a huge demand for silver-tier weapons. Gray believed that silver-tier weapons would definitely tempt the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Not only the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom, but also the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom and the Scarlet Kingdom. Now that he had reached king class, Gray estimated that his current combat strength should be comparable to a twice metamorphosis king class. After using Blood Frenzy, he should be comparable to a thrice Metamorphosis King class. In addition to his strong defense, spatial teleportation ring, and armor that could weaken attacks, Gray was no longer afraid of the royal family. Even if the royal family found out about his secret, he believed that he could protect himself. Moreover, requesting the blood of magic light blood fiends would not necessarily expose his secret. With his affinity physique, Gray would request the blood of magic light blood fiends to see if he could have an affinity with them. This was only natural. The three kingdoms would not necessarily think otherwise. The royal family of the Flame Kingdom definitely has the blood of magic light blood fiends in their treasury. I wonder if I can break into the Flame Kingdom's capital this time. Compared to requesting from the Purple Moon Kingdom, the Scarlet Kingdom, and the Jewel Kingdom, directly snatching the blood from the Flame Kingdom's treasury was undoubtedly a better choice. Of course, this was on the premise that he could break into the Flame Kingdom's capital. Moreover, he had to know where the Flame Kingdom's treasury was and find the Flame Kingdom's treasury before anyone else. Gray did not think that he would be of much use in breaking into the Flame Kingdom's capital. As for investigating the location of the Flame Kingdom's treasury, he had some ways to do so. Bart was currently in the royal capital, and as a member of a faction directly under the royal family, it was very likely that he was currently in the royal palace, allowing him to secretly investigate the location of the treasury. He didn't necessarily need to know the exact location. As long as he knew the approximate range, it would be enough for him to find it earlier than the others. Let's consume the poison dragon blood first. After taking off his clothes and preparing the hot water, Gray stepped back into the bathtub. He then took out the huge container containing the demonic poison dragon's blood and poured out a portion of it. The bright red blood had a slight fishy smell, but there was also a trace of fragrance in the fishy smell. After all, it was the blood of an extremely rare magic light rank blood fiend. To a certain extent, it was no different from magic herbs, which was why it had a trace of fragrance. Gulp. Gray drank the blood and quietly waited for the changes to occur. The blood slid down his throat into his stomach. Pain appeared from his stomach and spread throughout his body. This was a pain similar to burning, but there were some differences. To be precise, it was a bit like the burning and corrosive feeling when the body came into contact with strong acid. It was as if the body was being corroded, and in the process of corrosion, it was releasing heat, causing the body to heat up. The pain is a lot weaker than before. Lying in the bathtub, Gray's expression did not change much as he endured wave after wave of burning pain. Compared to before, the degree of burning pain was not as intense. Perhaps it was because Gray's current physique was able to withstand 2 metamorphoses, and this was only the first metamorphosis. In short, Gray easily endured the burning pain. During the metamorphosis, he was even able to think clearly. This was something that had never happened before. This was probably the easiest metamorphosis he had ever experienced after consuming the blood of a blood fiend. Half an hour later, the burning pain on Gray's body slowly disappeared. He had accurately estimated the time, which was also something that had never happened before. Soon, the burning pain completely disappeared, and Gray's body returned to normal. He walked out of the bathtub and put on his noble attire again. After experiencing the easiest metamorphosis, his body's fatigue was not intense. It was only a slight fatigue, as if he had only exercised once and stretched his muscles and bones. Should I purposely preserve a chance for metamorphosis in the future? After experiencing the easiest metamorphosis, Gray guessed that the reason why the metamorphosis was so easy was most likely because his physical fitness far exceeded the minimum requirement for the metamorphosis. Gray couldn't help but think of preserving the opportunity for the next metamorphosis as much as possible in the future. In this way, he would not have to endure the intense pain every time. Moreover, he would have a chance for metamorphosis. He would be able to immediately obtain the ability he wanted to obtain when he discovered it. Let's try out the toxic demonic dragon's ability. Gray's heart moved slightly. Relying on the instincts formed after consuming the blood of the toxic demonic dragon and obtaining the bloodline of the toxic demonic dragon, he displayed the toxic demonic dragon's ability. Whoosh! In front of Gray, a large amount of dark green fog suddenly appeared and quickly spread forward. Chi-chi, under the dark green fog, the plants, ground, and rocks in front of him showed obvious signs of melting. Their huge bodies were rapidly shrinking at a visible rate, turning into a pool of dark green liquid. In the end, in front of Gray, the plants in a large area had all disappeared, and a large number of potholes appeared on the ground. It's a little similar to the black fog, but it's fundamentally different. Seeing the destruction caused by the poison ability, Gray evaluated in his heart. The poison ability was a kind of ability that was a little similar to the black fog, but it was fundamentally different from the black fog. The characteristic of the black fog was that it would shatter anything it encountered. Because it was shattered, it would be dissolved. On the other hand, the poison ability was highly corrosive. It would react with anything it encountered, and in the process of the reaction, it would dissolve it. Two similar abilities, I'm afraid it's already. Gray narrowed his eyes. He already had some guesses in his heart. With a light flick of his finger, he activated a strand of mixed ability. Whoosh! In the time between his fingers, a fist-sized dark green fog appeared and shot forward. Pu. One tree after another was penetrated by this dark green fog. A huge hole appeared and continued to spread forward. After a long time, this dark green fog was completely exhausted. Sure enough, it's fused with the original mixed ability. Seeing the color of this fog, Gray's eyes lit up. Originally, the mixed ability was black, but now it had turned dark green. The color had changed, and it leaned more toward the color of poison ability. The mixing of abilities was inevitable. I didn't think there would be such a pleasant surprise. Gray's face showed unconcealable joy. He had swallowed the magic poison dragon beast's blood to transform in order to obtain the magic light bloodline and increase its grade, giving him room for improvement. Now, not only had his bloodline grade increased, but he had also added a new element to his mixed ability, becoming a 4-element mixed ability. This was simply an unexpected surprise for him. When I was a 3-element mixed ability, I could fight someone 2 levels above me. Now that I've become a 4-element mixed ability, I wonder if I can fight someone 3 levels above me? Gray's eyes were full of expectation. According to the rules of elemental mixed ability, every time he mixed an elemental ability, his power would increase by 1 level. Now, the mixed ability he had mastered had become a 4-element mixed ability. If there were no accidents, he should be able to fight someone 3 levels above him. Now that he was already at the king stage, if he could fight someone 3 levels above him, his combat power would be comparable to a thrice-transformed king stage. A thrice-transformed king stage combat power was currently the top combat power in the 4 great kingdoms. In other words, if his 4-element mixed ability could increase by 3 levels, he would become one of the strongest people in the entire continent. Whether it's like this or not, I'll know once I try. There was no one else in this forest, so Gray decided to go all out and test the extent of his mixed ability. Whoosh, whoosh, without using the enhancement of a silver weapon, he only used his blood beast ability. A large amount of dark green fog, like rolling dark clouds on a thunderstorm, surged out from Gray in all directions. Whoosh, whoosh, the dark green fog rolled and spread in all directions. Everywhere it passed, trees, rocks, soil, and even small mountains, everything disappeared. In the forest, before all kinds of animals could react, they had already disappeared under the dark green fog. 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, 3,000 meters. Finally, an extremely exaggerated scene appeared in front of Gray's eyes. Under Gray's attack, an area of the forest that stretched for several miles had completely disappeared. All traces of it had been erased, leaving only a bare area in its original place. A blow that could wipe out an entire forest. Such power made Gray's eyes widen. He has definitely reached the thrice-transformed king stage. Gray's breathing was slightly rapid. During this period of time, because he had been exploring the cemetery, he had seen thrice-transformed king stage attacks many times. He was very sure that the power he had just used had definitely reached the level of a thrice-transformed king stage. A thrice-transformed king stage was the top combat power in the four great kingdoms. Apart from the Flame Kingdom, each of the other three kingdoms only had one such person. Now, his combat power had reached this level. Although he was very confident in his own potential, he did not expect his combat power to reach the thrice-transformed king stage so quickly. Suddenly, Gray's breathing became more rapid. He took a few deep breaths to suppress his excitement. He thought of a problem that made him short of breath. My conventional combat power is already at the thrice-transformed king stage. What if I use Blood Frenzy? Chapter 560. Berserk Blood Skill was a blood skill that could increase strength, speed, defense, and the abilities of blood fiends. It was divided into 3 levels according to the level of understanding and resonance of the Berserk precept. The higher the level, the greater the increase. Gray had only reached the first level and had just reached the threshold of using Blood Skill Berserk. However, even if he had just reached the threshold of using Blood Skill Berserk, it was enough to increase his fighting power by 1 level. What kind of combat power would a thrice metamorphosis king be at if he were to use his Blood Skill Berserk and increase his combat power by 1 level? Magic Light Level Combat Power. Gray's gaze was blazing, his eyes shining. Above the 3rd level was the Magic Light level. After using Berserk Blood Skill, his combat power would increase by 1 level. Naturally, the combat power he could unleash would be at the Magic Light level. Although he could only reach this level for a short period of time because of his blood skill, he had achieved it. Even if he could only maintain it for a short period of time at the Magic Light level, it was still a historical achievement. I might not be able to reach the Magic Light level. Suppressing his excitement, Gray calmed down a little. If he wanted to reach the Magic Light level, he had to meet a condition. That was, Berserk Blood Skill could still increase his combat power by 1 level when his combat power reached the 3rd level of the King level. Going from the 3rd level of the King level to the Magic Light level was a huge leap. It was different from the previous leaps within the King level. Gray was not sure if he could make the leap. To see if he could make the leap and reach the Magic Light level, Gray chose to use the simplest method, which was to use his blood skill and judge by the power of his attacks. Using his mind to communicate with the Berserk precept in his mind, a shadow of the Berserk precept appeared in Gray's body. His body grew rapidly, from delicate to burly. Soon, he was more than 2 meters tall. The forest disappeared. Outside the forest, a mountain that was more than 1,000 meters tall appeared in front of him. Looking at the mountain, he did not draw his sword. Instead, he slashed forward with his hand. Poof! As he slashed, a dark green giant blade appeared and attacked the mountain in the distance. The dark green giant blade stirred up a terrifying gust of wind. Although it did not touch the ground, a huge crack appeared in the ground wherever it passed. The crack quickly spread towards the distant mountain. The dark green giant blade was extremely fast, so fast that it was almost impossible to see it clearly. In almost the blink of an eye, the dark green giant blade had already slashed vertically on the mountain peak. Rumble! With a loud bang, the earth quaked and the mountains shook. Dust flew everywhere, and the entire mountain was swept up by the sputtering dust. Whoosh! Dispelling the berserk state, a pair of greenish-black wings appeared on Gray's back. He quickly crossed the distance of several miles and arrived in front of the mountain. The dust gradually dispersed, and the outline of the mountain slowly became clear. A trace of light eerily shone from the middle of the mountain. When the dust finally settled, the silhouette of the mountain became clear. At the center of the mountain that was over 1,000 meters tall, there was a huge crack that was over 100 meters wide. The crack went from the front to the back and actually split the entire mountain in half. The mountain that was originally an entire mountain was actually split in half by the dark green giant blade just now. Splitting a mountain in half with one strike. Gray sucked in a breath of cold air. He was shocked by the power of his attack. Although it was shocking to destroy a forest that stretched for several miles in one strike, it was still within the acceptable range. Although a forest that stretched for several miles was wide, there were gaps between the trees, and the trees were sparsely distributed. The destructive power required was not as great as one would imagine. However, splitting a mountain that was over 1,000 meters in half with one strike was different. The mountain was solid, and most of the mountains were mixed with hard boulders. Under such circumstances, splitting a mountain in half would definitely require a force that was several times greater than the former. It's definitely stronger than a thrice metamorphosis king-level fighter. It should be comparable to Diphony Violet when she uses a gold weapon, but I don't know if it has reached the magic light level. Looking at such destructive power, Gray raised his eyebrows. He was not sure if the power of this attack had reached the magic light level. In the 1,000 years since the fall of the Empire, there had never been a magic light level existence on this continent. Without a reference point, it was naturally difficult to determine if the power of his attack had reached the magic light level or not. Shaking his head, Gray did not dwell on this issue any longer. He flew towards the camp. Since he could not determine the power of his attack, he could only forget about it. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Half a day later, 4 figures stepped through the void. They were all king-level fighters, and judging from their direction, their destination was obviously the capital of the Flame Kingdom. Among the 4, 3 of them had masks on their faces. The one without a mask was a beautiful woman with a beauty mark at the corner of her mouth. They were the 4 from the 5th faction. When they found out that the Flame Kingdom was besieged by 3 kingdoms and was surrounded in the palace, the 4 of them could not help but have the idea of taking advantage of the situation, so they hurried over. When the people saw the mountain peak that had been split in half, they were suddenly shocked. They stopped and landed on the mountain peak. From the traces at the scene, the time when the mountain was split in half was definitely not more than a few days ago. It might even have been just recently. Magic light level combat power. This is the destructive power of a magic light level combat power. The woman with the beauty mark at the corner of her mouth said in a low voice. Is there still a magic light level expert in this world? A man with a black mask on his face frowned. Impossible. The promotion rules of this world have been modified by the plane origin formation. It is impossible for anyone to break the rules and break through to the magic light level. The man with the yellow mask, the middle-aged man who was the leader of the 4, said. Then what's going on? The last person of the 4, a man with a gray mask, asked doubtfully. It should be related to that golden weapon. It should be caused by a thrice metamorphosed monarch level using a golden weapon. The man with the yellow mask said. Indeed, a thrice metamorphosed monarch level using a golden weapon can indeed display the power of a magic light level. The beautiful woman agreed. Golden weapon, sigh, if you could have snatched the golden weapon last time, Derek, you would have already reached the magic light level. The man with the gray mask said. It is indeed a pity, but there is no need to rush. There is still plenty of time. The man with the yellow mask, Derek, shook his head. Let's go. If we can snatch the Flame Kingdom's treasury from the 3 kingdoms, we should have a good harvest. The 4 of them left the mountain that had been split in half and continued to rush towards the capital of the Flame Kingdom. A few days later, 3 teams of more than 200 people arrived outside the capital of the Flame Kingdom and met up with the people from the 3 kingdoms who had been waiting for a long time. These were 3 special teams made up of barbarian blood warriors and berserker warriors. They gathered almost half of the berserker and barbarian blood warriors from each kingdom. Among the teams from the Purple Moon Kingdom, Gray saw some people from the families that had conflicts with him in the past. He also saw people from the Nahum family who were now secretly under his control. They are finally here. Seeing these three teams, Gray let out a sigh of relief. He had been worried that Blair Blaze would really use the special medicine obtained from the tomb to break through the bottleneck and reach the magic light level. But now, the three teams had arrived, and there were no changes in the Flame Kingdom's capital of death. Obviously, Blair Blaze had not broken through the magic light level. It could be that he had not recovered from his injuries and had not had the time to take the medicine. It could also be that he had taken the medicine but failed. After all, there was a deep reason why no one could reach the magic light level in the past 1,000 years. A medicine that could break through the bottleneck might not be able to help Blair Blaze break through. Since we have arrived, let's make our move. We don't want to drag it out too long and cause unforeseen events. Diphony Violet said. That's right. Let's make our move as soon as possible. Blair Blaze makes me a little worried. Jennifer Austin raised her eyebrows and said, What's there to be worried about? Could it be that he can break through the magic light level? No one has succeeded in 1,000 years. I don't believe that he can succeed. But since we have to make our move, let's make our move. Lennon Scarlet did not mind, but he did not object either. Flame Kingdom's palace. Lord Blair, Your Majesty, it's not good. The reinforcements of the three kingdoms have arrived. A middle-aged man in battle armor ran into the hall in a panic and said anxiously. The Flame Kingdom had naturally been paying attention to the movements of the three kingdoms. He was one of the people sent to pay attention. When he saw the arrival of the three reinforcements, he immediately rushed to report. So fast? Could it be that they were not intercepted? A king-level expert was shocked. After seeing the three kingdoms block the Flame Kingdom's capital but not make their move, the royal family had already guessed the plans of the three kingdoms. For this reason, the royal family had ordered the aristocratic forces to intercept the reinforcements of the three kingdoms at all costs and by time. But now, it seemed that the reinforcements of the three kingdoms had not been intercepted and had arrived at the capital without any hindrance. As expected, we can't count on them. Flame Kingdom's King Modi Flame frowned. The Flame Kingdom had encountered an unprecedented crisis. The aristocratic forces had clearly developed some thoughts and had begun to obey the orders of the Flame Kingdom's royal family. In fact, it was just as he had guessed. The Flame Kingdom had encountered a crisis, and the aristocratic forces had begun to think of a way out. The aristocratic forces that obeyed the orders of the Flame Kingdom's royal family to intercept the three kingdoms could be said to be very few. Because of this, the reinforcements of the three kingdoms had arrived at the Flame Kingdom's capital so quickly. Lord Blair, how are your injuries? He looked at Blair Blaze with anticipation. It's almost healed. Well, it's time to take the bottleneck potion. Blair Blaze coldly looked outside the capital and walked toward a secret room. He wanted to reach the magic light level before the three kingdoms breached the capital. Chapter 561. Attack. Outside the Flame Kingdom's capital, a team of over 800 people from the three kingdoms spread out and surrounded the main gate of the capital. Following the orders of Diphony Violet, Jennifer Austin, and Lennon Scarlet, this team of over 800 people from the three kingdoms simultaneously attacked the defensive barrier of the Flame Kingdom's capital. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The team of close to 800 people had a mix of abilities. Earth, fire, wind, thunder, ice, shadow, water, poison, wood, and metal elemental abilities were present. When so many people used different elemental abilities to attack together, the scene was spectacular. The dazzling colors of elemental abilities bloomed like fireworks, beautiful but deadly as they attacked the defensive barrier of the Flame Kingdom's capital. Boom, boom, boom. Terrifying explosions occurred on the defensive barrier of the Flame Kingdom's capital. The defensive barrier violently shook and let out a trembling sound, as if it was about to shatter in the next moment. Crash! Under the influence of the defensive barrier of the capital, the entire capital shook violently as if there was a strong earthquake. Houses all over the capital collapsed. Some people were buried alive in their houses, while others were lucky enough to escape from their houses. Their faces were deathly pale and filled with fear. Panic spread throughout the capital. Everyone's faces were filled with fear and hesitation, as if the end of the world was coming. The runic array has been damaged in 30 places. The rune master is repairing it. The runic array has been damaged in 70 places. The runic array has been damaged in 100 places. The defensive barrier's power is affected. Standing on the walls of the capital, the royal family of the Flame Kingdom and the nobles of the capital all had serious expressions. Their hearts sank to the bottom and cold sweat slid down their foreheads. The runic array was being damaged at an extremely fast speed. If this continued, the runic array would soon be broken through by the three kingdoms. Without the richest person in the runic array, they would have to face the allied forces of the three kingdoms. In the three kingdoms team, Gray did not use his newly acquired 4 mixed abilities. He only used 3 mixed abilities. Even so, he still attracted the attention of Francis, Sophia, and the Gem Queen. Now, even if Gray attacked with 3 mixed abilities, his power was enough to reach the level of a second Metamorphosis King. This kind of power shocked everyone. Gray's strength had become stronger again. The Flame Kingdom's defensive barrier won't last much longer. In a forest near the royal city, the Fifth Force was hiding and watching the fireworks calmly. After all, it's an incomplete defensive array. It can't be compared to a complete defensive array. Meryl said calmly. This time, if nothing unexpected happens, the Flame Kingdom should be destroyed by the three kingdoms. The gray-masked man, Chao Su, said, I don't care about that. I just hope that the treasury of the Flame Kingdom's royal family can satisfy me. The black-masked man, Faust, chuckled. After the defensive barrier is broken, move faster. Don't let the other 3 countries get ahead of you. The yellow-masked man, Derek, said. Rumble, rumble. 10 odd minutes later, the defensive barrier of the Flame Kingdom's royal city shook violently, as if it would collapse at any moment. Its defensive power was clearly weaker than before. Soon, the defensive barrier is about to break. Sensing this change, the eyes of Gray and the others lit up. Crack! After a few minutes, the defensive barrier shook even more violently. It was like a balloon that could burst at any time. Finally, with a cracking sound, the defensive barrier completely collapsed and disappeared. The defensive barrier is broken. The same words came from the three kingdoms and the Flame Kingdom on the city wall. The three kingdoms were filled with joy, while the Flame Kingdom's voice was filled with panic. Charge in! Diphone Violet held her golden weapon and looked at the city gate that was dozens of meters tall and mixed with precious metals. Purple flames gathered on her golden weapon as she slashed out. The purple flames hit the metal gate, and the incomparably tough metal gate instantly melted, revealing a large hole that could allow dozens of people to pass through side by side. The allied army of the three kingdoms quickly rushed into the hole. Block the gap! Within the royal city, a large number of blood warriors rushed to the city gate and clashed with the allied army of the three kingdoms. Poo, piu, piu. Almost immediately there were casualties. There were people from the Flame Kingdom, Purple Moon, Scarlet, and Gem Kingdoms. Blood dyed the ground near the city gate red, as if the ground had been splashed with red paint. Pung, pung, pung. The three kings of the Purple Moon, Scarlet, and Gem Kingdoms stepped into the void and appeared at a place higher than the city wall, rushing into the royal city. Rumble, rumble, rumble. On top of the Flame Kingdom city wall, there were also kings who stepped into the void and intercepted the three kingdoms' kings. Their numbers were no less than the three kingdoms. The Raging Flame Kingdom was the strongest kingdom among the four kingdoms. It had more king-level experts than any of the other three kingdoms. In addition, some of the king-level experts from the other three kingdoms had stayed behind to guard the kingdom. Therefore, even if the three kingdoms joined forces, they did not have the advantage in numbers. If it were not for the fact that they had obtained a golden weapon and had absolute combat power, the three kingdoms would not have dared to attack the Flame Kingdom. Move out! In a forest some distance away from the city gate, the four people from the fifth power quickly rushed out of the forest and climbed up the city wall, quickly entering the Flame Kingdom's royal city. The Flame Kingdom's attention was completely attracted by the three kingdoms, so they did not notice their infiltration. The four of them went straight for the empty Flame Kingdom's royal city. Enemy attack. They were only discovered when they reached the royal city. However, the royal city was empty now. Most of the people had been sent to the city gate to fight the three kingdoms, leaving only a few guards. Pu. The four of them attacked and began a massacre, easily killing the guards. The four of them rushed into the depths of the royal city, towards the treasury. Last time, the yellow-masked man Derek had infiltrated the Flame Kingdom's royal city, so he knew the location of the Flame Kingdom's treasury very well. Pung. Gray was also like the other kings of the three kingdoms. He stepped into the void and rushed into the royal city. Go die! A Flame Kingdom king warrior attacked Gray. His long spear was wrapped in golden flames, like a burning meteor that crashed towards Gray. Swoosh! Without drawing his sword, he simply waved it lightly. A black fog had already turned into a giant blade, creating an ear-piercing sound. Feeling this extraordinary power, the Flame Kingdom king warrior's expression changed. He could not care less about attacking Gray. He raised his spear and formed a flame barrier in front of him. Pooh! The flame barrier was shattered, and the black fog giant blade struck the Flame Kingdom king warrior's spear. A huge force was transmitted from the spear to the Flame Kingdom king warrior's hand. Crack! Under this tremendous force, the king warrior of the Kingdom of Fire's hands were suddenly shaken and bent. The long spear that had been thrown backward hit his chest, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood and fly backward. He crashed into a house, smashing it into pieces and burying it under the rubble. Ignoring the Flame Kingdom king warrior, whose fate was unknown, Gray rushed into the depths of the Flame Kingdom's royal city. With the golden weapons, the three kingdoms' victory was inevitable. Compared to fighting the Flame Kingdom king warrior, he was more interested in the Flame Kingdom's treasury. After receiving his order to find the treasury, Bart had been secretly investigating the location of the Flame Kingdom's treasury. Although he had not found out the exact location, he had found out the general area. He was now going to meet up with Bart and then find the Flame Kingdom's treasure map under his lead. Lord Gray. Relying on an invisible mental connection, Gray met up with Bart on a street near the palace. Lead the way. Gray nodded and ordered. Bart respectfully replied and led Gray in the direction of the palace. They soon arrived at the palace. Someone arrived at the palace before me. When they arrived at the palace, Gray immediately noticed the corpse of the Fire Kingdom's guard. He raised his eyebrows but didn't say anything. Under Bart's lead, they headed to the palace's treasury. Not good, the other party is also going for the treasury. However, his expression quickly changed because the other party's route was almost exactly the same as his. They were both heading towards the treasury of the capital. This made him feel very uneasy. You lead the way. Gray lifted Bart up single-handedly and sprinted forward at full speed. Although Bart had the strength of a wild blood warrior and was not slow, he was undoubtedly much slower compared to Yang Ling, who had reached the peak of the first stage of the king stage and was comparable to a second stage king. Whoosh! Under Bart's guidance, Gray ran forward quickly. The more he ran, the more uneasy he felt. This was because the route was exactly the same as the group in front of him. Lord Gray, the treasury of the royal family is nearby, Bart said when he arrived at a place deep within the palace. Split up and search. Gray put Bart down. After giving the order, he quickly searched the surrounding rooms. It's here. In one of the rooms, Gray found the entrance to the treasury. However, there was no joy on his face. This was because the entrance to the treasury had just been opened. This meant that someone had already entered the treasury before him. Who is it that knows the location of the Flame Kingdom's treasury better than I do? Filled with doubts, Gray went down the stone stairs and quickly saw a tunnel. The tunnel was filled with all kinds of scorch marks. It was obviously caused by the group of people in front of him triggering the runic mechanisms in the tunnel. Rumble, rumble, rumble! Activating the black ring, the black battle armor covered his entire body. His body turned into metal. Gray quickly rushed forward along the tunnel. The runic mechanisms were triggered. One attack after another landed on his body, but he easily blocked them all. With his current defense and the black battle armor, as long as it was not a runic mechanism from the Empire, it would not be a threat to him. Chapter 562. Relying on their powerful defenses, the four of them easily passed through the runic mechanisms and arrived at the treasury of the Flame Kingdom. They turned on the rune lamps in the treasury, and a dazzling radiance entered their eyes. All sorts of treasures flickered in the large space. Jewels and accessories were piled up into mountains, and top-grade rune materials could be seen everywhere. At first glance, one could tell that the weapons were of high quality. There were also many sets of exquisite armor. All sorts of magic potions and blood-fiend blood filled several platforms, while gold and magic coins were piled up like mountains. There was a rich medicinal fragrance in the air, coming from a long row of medicine cabinets at the side of the room. As the strongest of the four kingdoms, the Flame Kingdom's treasury was terrifying. It could even be said that it was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. It was like a commoner trying to guess how wealthy a landed noble was, and the answer would always be beyond their expectations. Wow, there's quite a lot of good stuff. Faust's eyes lit up, but then he said regretfully, "What do we do? There's too much good stuff, and I can't fit them all in my portal bag." This wasn't an exaggeration, but rather the truth. There were simply too many things here. Even if their portal bags were of the highest quality and could hold thousands of cubic meters, they still couldn't fit everything. Pick the most valuable ones and take them away. The yellow-masked man, Derek, gave the order, and the four of them immediately took action. The yellow-masked man, Derek, looked around and immediately saw a huge rune puppet that was more than 10 meters tall. It was the rune puppet that the Fire Kingdom had obtained in the tomb. Because it was too difficult to crack, the Flame Kingdom hadn't had the time to crack the method to control it, so they could only leave it in the treasury. He quickly stepped forward and put it into his portal bag. Although the rune puppet was huge, it was also very valuable. The beautiful Meryl's hand quickly swiped across a weapon rack, and all the weapons on it were put into her portal bag. Chaucer came to a pile of top-grade rune materials, and a hole appeared in his portal bag. He quickly swallowed all the materials into his portal bag. Faust put away many precious gems into his portal bag, and then walked towards the platform containing the blood-fiend blood. Oh no, someone's coming. At this moment, the sound of the rune mechanism being activated entered his ears. He couldn't help but pause in his movements as he walked towards the platform filled with the blood of the blood fiends. The Flame Kingdom was defeated so quickly? The beautiful woman, Meryl, raised her eyebrows. "Move faster. We'll leave after we get more," the yellow-masked man, Derek, instructed. In the face of the three kingdoms that possessed gold-tier weapons, even with their strong defense, they could not help but feel some fear. The combat power of magic light was enough to hurt them. The black-masked man, Faust, nodded and walked to the platform where the blood was stored. He quickly put the bottles of blood into his portal bag. One of the bottles had the words, "Emerald Dragon," engraved on it. It was a magic light-level blood beast of the wood lizard sequence. Whoosh! Accompanied by a gust of wind, Gray quickly rushed into the Flame Kingdom's royal treasury and saw the four people of the Fifth Force. "It's you guys." Gray raised his eyebrows. The three kingdoms had broken into the Flame Kingdom's capital, but the Fifth Force had beaten them to it. Gray's expression turned cold. When he saw the black-masked man standing on the platform where the blood of the blood fiends were stored, his eyes were filled with killing intent. He pounced towards the black-masked man. "You're courting death." Seeing Grey pounce, the black-masked man, Faust, sneered. Because he had cooperated with the 4 kingdoms in the tomb, he naturally knew the strength of the number 1 of the younger generation, Grey. Without using his blood skill, his strongest combat power would only be a first metamorphosis king tier. Relying on the items he had obtained from the tomb, his current combat power had reached a second metamorphosis king tier. Naturally, he was not afraid of his opponent. He was originally worried that it would be a group of kings from the 3 kingdoms. Now that there was only one person, and he wasn't that strong, he looked down on him even more. Clang! He unsheathed his weapon. It was a black short sword less than a meter long. It was filled with dark green mist as it slashed towards Grey. Humph! Grey snorted and unsheathed his sword. Dark green mist swirled around the sword as he slashed at the man. His main goal this time was the blood of the magic light rank blood fiends. He had already set his sights on the blood of the blood fiends. When he saw the black-masked man trying to steal his blood, he couldn't help but be enraged. He attacked with all his strength. Clang! The 2 swords that were also wrapped in dark green mist collided. In the next moment, the sneer on the black-masked man's face turned into shock. A terrifying power was transmitted from the sword into his body. Even though his combat power had reached the king level after the second metamorphosis, he was swept away like a scarecrow by this terrifying power. He slammed into a golden mountain, causing it to explode. A large amount of gold coins flew everywhere. Ignoring the black-masked man, Faust, who was sent flying, Grey looked towards the platform where the blood of the blood fiends were stored. He quickly used his purple ring to collect the blood. Whether it was him or the black-masked man, both of them had intentionally controlled their power so that the blood fiend's power would only be attached to their swords. The blood on the platform wasn't affected at all. After collecting the rest of the blood into his purple ring, Grey ran towards the platform where many potions were stored. He quickly swept them all into his purple ring. "Faust, what are you doing?" The beautiful woman, Meryl, rolled her eyes. A twice metamorphosis king-class expert had actually lost to a 1 metamorphosis king-class expert. She couldn't understand what was going on. She couldn't understand why Grey and the black-masked man, Faust, had suppressed their power to their swords so that they wouldn't destroy the blood. As a result, she didn't see the abnormality in Grey's power. "This kid is strange. His power is already comparable to a thrice metamorphosis king." The black-masked man, Faust, removed the gold coins covering his body with a serious expression. "He thrice metamorphosis king? How is that possible?" The beautiful woman, Meryl, was shocked. She had crossed paths with Grey many times. In the beginning, Grey's power was still a bit below that of a king. But in the Tomb of the Kings, Grey's power had suddenly skyrocketed, reaching a level comparable to a thrice metamorphosis king. And now, his power had skyrocketed again, reaching a thrice metamorphosis king. She found it hard to believe. "Hand over the rune portal bag." Grey walked towards the black-masked man and coldly said. When he entered, the black-masked man had already collected a portion of the blood. He wasn't sure if he had collected the blood of the magic light rank blood fiends. He would rather kill the wrong person than let him go. He decided to take the rune portal bag from the black-masked man. Arrogant! Seeing that Grey was actually forcing the black-masked man to hand over the runic spatial bag in a domineering manner in front of them, the faces of the other members of the Fifth Force turned cold. Among them, the grey-masked man, Old Joe, snorted coldly and drew his blade to slash at Grey. Black lightning wrapped around his sword. It was only as thick as a thumb, but it exuded an extremely dangerous aura. Whoosh! Sensing the grey-masked man, Old Joe, attacking from the side with his sword, Grey countered with his sword. Clang! After the clash, Grey and the grey-masked man, Old Joe, couldn't help but retreat. This time, Gray was the one who was shocked. Thrice Metamorphosis King? The gray-masked man, Old Joe, was also a thrice Metamorphosis King. Together with the yellow-masked man, who had displayed a thrice Metamorphosis King in the tomb, didn't this mean that the fifth faction had two thrice Metamorphosis Kings? The most powerful kingdom among the four kingdoms, the Flame Kingdom's royal family, only had two thrice Metamorphosis Kings. So far, the fifth faction only had a team of 4, but there were two thrice Metamorphosis Kings among them. To him, this was simply unbelievable. It could even be considered very strange. "You're too arrogant, sir." The yellow-masked man snorted and looked at Gray coldly. However, there was a hint of fear in his heart. Gray's situation was too strange. Gray felt that the fifth faction was very strange. In his opinion, Gray was even stranger. His strength had increased from a single Metamorphosis King to a twice Metamorphosis King to a thrice Metamorphosis King. Even someone as knowledgeable as him had never seen such a way of increasing one's strength. I'll say it again. Hand over the rune portal bag. Although he felt that the fifth faction was very strange, Gray naturally wouldn't give up so easily. He looked at the black-masked man again and said coldly, "Arrogant." The yellow-masked man, Derek, had a terrifying look in his eyes. In the next moment, the speed of a thrice Metamorphosis King exploded. He unsheathed his long sword and slashed horizontally at Gray. When his long saber appeared, ice quickly spread on the surrounding ground. The yellow-masked man, Derek, was a thrice Metamorphosis King. Gray knew that. He didn't dare to be careless. The dark green mist on his long sword was extremely compressed as it met the attack. Clang! Gray took a few steps back. The power of his opponent's attack was actually stronger than his. If his combat strength was a thrice Metamorphosis King, then his opponent's combat strength was a thrice Metamorphosis King at the pinnacle. He didn't have time to think about how his opponent's combat strength had increased to a thrice Metamorphosis King. From the side, a sword wrapped in black lightning was slashing at him. It was the black-masked man, Chow South. He instinctively swung his sword at his opponent. However, before he could do so, the sword wrapped in black lightning had already landed on his body. Pung! The power of a thrice Metamorphosis King exploded on Gray's armor. Fortunately, the armor's strong defense blocked the attack without any damage. The weakened power was transmitted to his body through the armor. Now that he had metallized, his defense was at the pinnacle of a thrice Metamorphosis King. Because the impact was greatly weakened, he didn't even take half a step back. Whoosh! With a cold look in his eyes, Gray quickly slashed at his opponent with his sword. Chapter 563. Oh no! Not only did the attack fail to injure Gray, but it also failed to push Gray back. Gray's sword slashed at him, and the black-masked man, Chaucer, quickly retreated. Slash! The black-masked man, Chaucer, did not manage to dodge the attack completely. His gray clothes were torn apart, revealing the skin underneath. However, there were no wounds on his body. He was unscathed under Gray's thrice-evolved king-level attack. His defense was even stronger than Gray's. After all, Gray was only unscathed under the thrice-evolved king-level attack with the help of his black armor. Chaucer, on the other hand, was relying on his own defense. The other king-level warriors from the three kingdoms should be here soon. Let's retreat. Sensing that Gray's armor was extremely strong, it would be difficult to kill Gray in a short period of time. The yellow-masked man, Derek, did not want to be entangled with Gray. He rushed toward the exit of the treasury. The other three nodded their heads and followed the yellow-masked man, Derek, towards the exit. Gray's strangeness made them feel apprehensive. You want to leave? Gray's face turned cold. He wondered if he should use his blood skill Berserk. In an instant, he made a decision. The magic light level Blood Fiend's blood was too important to him. Even if he had to expose all his trump cards, he had to snatch the rune portal bag from the black-masked man. Crack! After activating blood skill Berserk, Gray's height increased to more than 2 meters with the crisp sound of his joints rubbing against each other. He became extremely burly, and the battle armor on his body grew along with his body size. It did not break or appear to be cramped. Ha! Under the effect of berserk, Gray felt stronger than ever. With a low roar, a dark green giant blade slashed toward the 4 people who had already rushed to the exit of the treasury. Swish! Feeling the terrifying movement behind them, the 4 people from the 5th power turned pale. They looked back and were instantly shocked. A dark green giant blade was slashing toward them quickly. Just the aftershock alone was enough to make the rune-reinforced treasury collapse. This was definitely a magic light level attack. Dodge! The 4 of them dodged in a panic, but the dark green blade was simply too fast. The first to bear the brunt of the attack was the black-masked man, Faust, followed by the beautiful woman, Merrill, followed by the gray-masked man, Chaucer, and the yellow-masked man, Derek. Puff! Blood splattered everywhere. Even with their strong defenses, they couldn't help but be injured by the magic light level attack. The power of this attack was not limited to just that. The dark green giant blade slashed upwards, instantly slicing open the ground that was 100 meters thick. The 4 people from the 5th force were knocked down to the ground by the huge dark green blade. Gray jumped up into the air and chased after them. He had to snatch the black-masked man's rune portal bag no matter what. Damn it, that attack just now was definitely at the level of magic light, and it was poisonous. The 4 members of the 5th force, who had been hit by the dark green giant blade from 100 meters underground, stood up in a sorry state. The 4 of them weren't seriously injured. Although their strong defenses couldn't completely block Gray's attack, they were able to avoid serious injuries. However, the 4 of them didn't look too good. They had fought with the 4 kingdoms many times, and this was the first time they had been injured. Moreover, they could feel the poison spreading through their bodies, and their bodies were gradually becoming numb. Whoosh! Gray rushed out of the ground and looked at the 4 coldly. The cold light in his eyes was like 2 blades stabbing at the 4, causing their scalps to go numb. Monster! The beautiful woman, Merrill, looked at Gray with fear. She looked at him as if he was a monster. The speed at which he grew shocked her. Give him the rune portal bag. The yellow-masked man, Derek, had a serious expression as he turned to the gray-masked man, Faust. Here you go. The black-masked man, Faust, had a look of unwillingness and humiliation on his face. In the end, he took off the rune portal bag and threw it to Gray. Gray caught it and touched the rune portal bag with a trace of blood energy, looking inside. It's this bag. The rune portal bag had many containers for blood fiends. One of the containers had the words, Magic Light Level Emerald Dragon, engraved on it. The other party had indeed obtained the blood of a Magic Light Level blood fiend. Fortunately, he didn't hesitate. Otherwise, he would have missed the opportunity to obtain the blood of a magic light level blood fiend. Might as well destroy the 5th force. Gray looked at the 5th force that had escaped a few hundred meters away while he was looking at the rune portal bag. His eyes were filled with killing intent. This time, he had forced the 5th force so forcefully. He and the 5th force could be considered as having a death grudge. Moreover, the 5th force's strange growth made him feel a sense of danger. He couldn't help but think of wiping them all out. Rumble! A loud sound came from the other side of the palace. Large amounts of buildings in the palace collapsed. Purple and golden flames soared into the sky from that direction. This kind of commotion? Gray's expression froze. This kind of commotion was not inferior to his attack just now. Judging from the commotion, it was actually an evenly matched collision. In other words, there were actually 2 people with this kind of combat power. He guessed that one of them should be Diphony Violet with the golden weapon. Who was the other person? Could it be that Burrell has broken through? Ignoring the 5th force, Gray hurriedly rushed in that direction. When Gray arrived at the location of the explosion, he immediately saw an exaggerated crater that extended over 1,000 meters in front of him. The potholes were filled with broken walls and ruins. The originally majestic and magnificent palace buildings had collapsed. Many places were bright red because they had melted into magma under the high temperature. Blazing heat waves spread out from the center of the potholes. Around him, the people from the three kingdoms who had already arrived at the palace looked at the crater with shock. Some of them had severe burns on their bodies, probably from the aftermath of the explosion. In the crater, two figures stood on top of the ruins. These were two old figures. One of them held a war blade that looked like it had been poured with gold. The wrinkles on his body were like the bark of an old tree, but his eyes were extremely sharp. The other figure held a long spear with golden lines on it. His body was also covered with wrinkles, but his back was as straight as the long spear in his hand. These two were Difoni Violet and Blair Blaze. He can actually contend against Lord Difoni with a golden weapon. How did Blair Blaze become so strong? Could it be that he has already broken through? How can it be? No one has been able to break through for 1,000 years. How can he? The kings of the three kingdoms looked at Blair Blaze with palpitations, shock and panic. After breaking through the defensive barrier of the Flame Kingdom, although he was met with a fierce counterattack from the Flame Kingdom, he relied on a golden weapon to defeat the opponent and arrive at the palace. Just as they were clearing out the remaining members of the Flame Kingdom's royal family, Blair Blaze appeared and killed 3 kings in one strike. Fortunately, Difoni Violet appeared in time and intercepted him, preventing more casualties. The worst situation has occurred. Gray's expression was grave. The worst situation had occurred. Blair Blaze had used the bottleneck potion to break through the bottleneck and become the first magic light level powerhouse in 1,000 years after the fall of the Empire. This was a situation that couldn't get any worse. For the three kingdoms, this was a great crisis. Blair Blaze, you broke through the magic light level? Difoni Violet's face was full of caution as she asked in a grave voice. That's right, a magic light warrior. I am now a magic light warrior. Blair Blaze's gaze lightly swept across the surroundings, enjoying the fearful gazes directed at him. As if he had taken a hallucinogenic potion, he felt an unprecedented joy. Even if the Flame Kingdom's royal family was almost completely wiped out and he was almost alone, it still could not stop him from feeling this joy. Becoming the first magic light level powerhouse in 1,000 years, he would have a lifespan of at least 1,000 years. He had a lot of time to squander, enough to create an even stronger Flame Kingdom than before. That would be an empire that would unify the 4 kingdoms and control the entire world. I'll kill you first, then I'll kill the others. After a moment, his gaze once again fell on Difoni Violet as he spoke in a calm voice. His tone was extremely calm. There was no killing intent, nor was there any overflowing prestige. But in the ears of everyone present, it was like the judgment of the god of death. They felt their hair stand on end and cold sweat unconsciously slid down their back. Whoosh! With one step, Blair Blaze appeared 100 meters away. With 2 steps, Blair Blaze appeared 200 meters away. His figure seemed to be jumping through space as he approached Difoni Violet at a ghostly speed. This is the speed of a magic light level powerhouse? Difoni Violet's wrinkled face became even more wrinkled due to the deep seriousness. Her hand that was holding onto her golden weapon tightened as cold sweat slid down her forehead. A bone-piercing sense of danger enveloped her. For someone who was already more than 400 years old and had seen too many storms, this was really inconceivable. He had not felt this sense of danger for a long time. He wanted to swing his blade a few times, but he stopped midway. His opponent's speed was too fast, so fast that he could not lock onto him. Whoosh! In the end, he still swung his blade because if this continued, he might not even have the chance to swing his blade. The extremely condensed purple flames turned into a purple rainbow and attacked. The power that was enough to destroy mountains and destroy cities was compressed into this purple rainbow as it attacked Blair Blaze. Wherever it passed, the ground melted, leaving behind a large amount of red liquid. From afar, it was clearly a river of magma. Just a little bit of residual heat was enough to melt the ground into magma and form a river. This was the power of his golden weapon. Whoosh! However, after launching such an attack, the expression on his face suddenly sank. His heart sank to the bottom because he had already determined that he had not been able to hit Blair Blaze. Sure enough, before the purple rainbow attacked, Blair Blaze had already swept forward. The purple rainbow swept past Blair Blaze's afterimage and spread all the way forward, leaving behind a long, endless trail of magma. Chapter 564. Humph! After dodging the purple rainbow, Blair Blaze looked coldly at Diphony Violet. He was only 100 meters away from Diphony Violet. With his current speed, he could cover this distance in an instant. Whoosh! In the next moment, he appeared beside Diphony Violet. The tip of his spear flashed with golden light, as if there was a sun on the tip of the spear. He stabbed at Diphony Violet. Whoosh! The air vibrated violently under the terrifying heat, producing an ear-piercing sound. Lava appeared on the ground under his attack. This was an extremely condensed golden flame that was no less powerful than the purple rainbow. However, it was different from the purple rainbow that was formed with the help of a golden weapon. This was formed with his own ability. Whoosh! The terrifying heat attacked from the side. Diphony Violet's expression was solemn, but her movements were swift. The golden saber in her hand was burning with purple flames. With a power that was no weaker than the golden flame spear, she met the incoming golden flame spear with a slash of her saber. When she noticed that the purple rainbow had failed to hit Blair Blaze, she was already on guard against Blair Blaze's close-range attack. That was why she was able to react so quickly. Boom! The golden flame spear and the purple flame saber collided. It was as if a comet burning with golden flames and a comet burning with purple flames had collided, producing a deafening sound and violent tremors. Under this terrifying tremor, a large number of buildings in the palace collapsed. The Flame Kingdom's royal family had operated for thousands of years. The exquisite palace buildings, which were like works of art, were collapsing and collapsing like fragile sand sculptures. At the center of the collision, a terrifying heat was leaking out. The surrounding ground was turning into lava at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon a lake of lava was formed. Pa, pa, pa. Blair Blaze and Diphony Violet both retreated quickly. Although the two of them were moving close to the ground, they were actually stepping on the void, which was not high above the ground. The two of them did not dare to rashly land on the ground because the ground around them was full of lava. Whoosh! Crackle! Suddenly, an earthy yellow light and a crimson bolt of lightning quickly attacked the retreating Blair Blaze. They were like two gorgeous streams of light. After these two streams of light, Jennifer Austin and Lennon Crimson, who had transformed thrice into king, charged at Blair's blazing flames with murderous intent in their eyes. Facing Blair Blaze, who had reached the magic light tier, even if they were thrice transformed king tier, they couldn't face him head-on. Hence, they chose to hide in the dark and wait for an opportunity to strike. Seeing that there was a gap between Blair Blaze and Diphony Violet's fight, the two immediately launched a sneak attack. "You're in a hurry to die." Seeing the two's sneak attack, Blair Blaze suddenly revealed a sinister smile. Then, his figure, who was retreating quickly, suddenly stopped. He actually relied on his speed and strength that had reached the magic light tier to forcibly stop his retreat. Then, with him as the center, a large amount of golden flames rushed out like a torrential river, annihilating the earthy yellow light and the crimson lightning, and continued to crash into Jennifer Austin and Lennon Crimson. Poof! Poof! Jennifer Austin and Lennon Crimson dodged back in horror, but they couldn't avoid the golden flames. They were both hit by the golden flames. Their bodies were charred black, and they spat out blood as they flew backward, crashing heavily into the ruins. Everything was completed almost in an instant. After doing all this, Blair Blaze fiercely stomped on the void, and a golden sun bloomed on the tip of his spear. He stabbed forward, and immediately blocked Diphone Violet's slash. Boom, boom, boom. Then, the two collided 3 times in a row. The first time, they were evenly matched. The second time, Diphone Violet faced a surprise attack from the side. She made a hasty move and was slightly at a disadvantage. And the third time, Blair Blaze's spear, wrapped in golden flames, turned into a golden shadow. From top to bottom, with a terrifying power that could split a mountain, the spear slashed vertically at Diphone Violet. Diphone Violet was even more hurried. She completely gave up on attacking and blocked in front of her with her sword. Bang! She barely blocked the spear, but because she was too hasty, she was sent flying by the terrifying power of the spear and slammed into a pool of magma on the ground. Magma sputtered everywhere, making a sizzling sound when it landed on the ground. Diphone Violet, who fell into the magma, was emitting a scorched smell. It came from the leather armor on her body and also from the burns on her body. With burning pain all over her body, Diphone Violet turned over and got up, almost reflexively jumping out of the magma pit. At this moment, she suddenly felt a piercing sense of danger. Whoosh! A spear was quickly stabbing towards her heart. On the tip of the spear, a golden light bloomed like the sun. The air violently boiled under this golden light, and a river of magma appeared on the ground. Lord Diphone, be careful! Lord Diphone, dodge quickly! The people of the 3 kingdoms were all anxious. They shouted in fear, their voices carrying a trace of despair. Facing the magic light level Blair Blaze, Jennifer Austin and Lennon Scarlet were heavily injured. Diphone Violet was their only hope. If Diphone Violet was also defeated, they would all die here. Just SOSO. Looking at Diphone Violet, who was about to be stabbed in the chest by the golden spear, Blair Blaze's face flashed with a sinister smile. The difference between him and a magic light level with a gold weapon and a magic light level was obvious. Apart from having magic light level strength, he was full of flaws in all other aspects. It's over. He was sure that with the power of the magic light level golden flames, Blair Blaze, who was stabbed in a vital part of his body, would definitely die. Whoosh! At this moment, a dark green giant blade appeared. The extremely compressed dark green fog transformed into a dark green gigantic blade that was almost corporeal. It tore through the air and split the ground, leaving behind a long, deep fissure in the ground as it attacked Blair Blazing at lightning speed. Behind the dark green giant blade, a figure more than 2 meters tall rushed out quickly. This person was Gray. Sensing that Blair Blaze was already a magic light warrior, Jennifer Austin and Lennon Scarlet chose to hide in the dark and wait for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. He also chose to do the same, hiding in the dark and waiting for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. Compared to appearing at the first moment to fight Blair Blaze together with Diphone Violet, it was better to hide in the dark while Blair Blaze was still unaware of his strength and wait for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack and severely injure Blair Blaze. Who? Being targeted by the dark green giant blade, Blair Blaze felt his hair stand on end. He was shocked, and his eyes were filled with astonishment and disbelief. After reaching the magic light level, his physical fitness had greatly improved, and his defense had become extremely strong. Even if he was not a physical blood warrior, he was confident that he could withstand the attack of a thrice metamorphosis king-tier warrior at the cost of minor injuries. Under such circumstances, other than Diphone Violet, who wielded a golden battle blade, who could give him a sense of danger, there was absolutely no one else who could give him a sense of danger. But now, such a person seemed to have appeared. This was simply inconceivable to him. Whoosh! Giving up on attacking Diphone Violet, he turned around and unleashed his full magic light speed. His speed was as fast as lightning, and there was a sonic boom in the air that exceeded the speed of sound. Blair Blaze quickly dodged to the side. Blair Blaze's reaction could not be described as slow. Sensing the danger, he immediately gave up on attacking Diphone Violet and dodged to the side. However, in order to ensure that this attack would succeed, Gray had also put in a lot of effort. Using the broken walls and debris, he quietly approached the place where the two people were fighting. When he attacked just now, he was less than 100 meters away from Blair Blaze. At this distance, with the power of the dark green giant blade at the magic light level, it was almost instantaneous. Pooh! The dark green giant blade struck Blair Blaze's back. As if he had been hit by a mountain, Blair Blaze's body fell heavily to the ground, smashing into a pool of lava formed by the battle just now. Lava splashed everywhere, and the original crater was covered by an even larger crater. Blair Blaze lay in the center of the crater in a dog-eat-dog posture. Dark red blood seeped out of his back, and one could clearly see the flesh that had been torn open. Even with the magic light level defense, Gray's attack had not lightly injured him. What's going on? The sudden reversal caused the people of the three kingdoms to be stunned. Their eyes were wide open, and their faces were full of astonishment. Diphone Violet, who should have been seriously injured or even dead, was unharmed. On the other hand, Blair Blaze, who had the absolute advantage, was suddenly heavily injured and flew to the ground. The attack's power had reached the magic light rank, and its speed was simply too fast. Most of them didn't even see what was going on. By the time they recovered, they discovered that Blair Blaze was already lying in the massive crater. Someone ambushed Blair Blaze. Only a few powerful king-class warriors were barely able to catch a glimpse of the dark green giant blade just now. It was because they had seen it that they felt it was even more unbelievable. Apart from Diphone Violet, there was actually someone else who could explode with such power. Why is Gray there? Some people noticed Gray, who was more than 2 meters tall after using Berserk transformation. This was because Gray had used Berserk transformation in the graveyard. At that time, he was also wearing the same battle armor, so they recognized him. Was he the one who attacked just now? A young man said, his eyes wide open. How is that possible? With Gray's strength, even if it was a sneak attack, there was no way he could have hurt Blair Blaze. A middle-aged man next to him immediately shook his head and refuted. If the one who had been ambushed was a thrice metamorphosis king-class warrior, he would have reluctantly believed it. However, the one who had been ambushed was a magic light warrior like Blair Blaze. He definitely could not believe it. It was Gray and Fergus. At this moment, an old man's eyes were filled with disbelief, but his tone was certain. He was a twice metamorphosis king-class warrior, and was one of the few people present who could see clearly. He was very sure that the ambush had been done by Gray. Chapter 565. Was it Gray who injured Blair Blaze? A bitter smile appeared on Francis's face. It was the bitter smile of someone who had drunk coffee without sugar. It was dry, helpless, and powerless. After advancing to King Tier, he had thought that the gap between him and Gray would be narrowed. Now, however, it seemed that not only had the gap between him and Gray not been narrowed, but it had instead widened. Although it had been a sneak attack, Blair Blaze was now a magic light tier powerhouse. To be able to injure a magic light tier powerhouse with a sneak attack, one had to have combat power close to that of a magic light tier. How could it have succeeded? Jennifer Austin and Lennon Scarlet, the two thrice metamorphosed kings, were the best examples. The two of them had launched a sneak attack on Blair Blaze, but in the end, Blair Blaze had emerged unscathed, while the two of them had been seriously injured. Gray had been able to injure Blair Blaze with a sneak attack, proving that his combat power was at least above that of Jennifer Austin and Lennon Scarlet. How did this guy become so much stronger? Sophia wrinkled her delicate nose, and her eyes curved into crescents. She felt that she had almost become numb to Gray's growth in strength. She believed that she was not the only one who felt this way. Most likely, the others felt the same way as well. Every once in a while, Gray's strength would increase greatly. This had happened several times already. Perhaps when they did not see Gray's strength suddenly increase greatly, they would feel that it was abnormal. Being in the same era as him is our generation's fortune, but also our generation's misfortune. Gemstone Queen Glyn Austin pushed her black hair behind her ear, and let out a long sigh. The first time she had noticed Gray was during the Three Kingdoms exchange. Although she had already felt that he was quite extraordinary at that time, she had never thought that he would grow to this point so quickly. His existence had given them motivation and a goal to pursue, but it had also been a blow to them. With him around, who among the younger generation would dare to call themselves geniuses? "It's you, how could it be you?" His back was burning with pain, and there was even some numbness. Brel Blazing's clothes were in tatters as he crawled out of the crater in a sorry state. He looked at Gray, who was now more than 2 meters tall, in shock and bewilderment. The power of that attack just now had definitely reached the level of magic light. He was sure of this without a doubt. With his current speed, even if it was a sneak attack, only a magic light level attack would be able to catch him off guard. However, the one who launched such an attack was actually Gray Fergus. He couldn't help but doubt his own judgment. Magic light was the lifelong goal of every king-class master in the past 1,000 years. He had been lucky enough to obtain the bottleneck potion, left behind by the Empire, which allowed him to reach the level of magic light. How could someone in their 20s reach that level? Impossible. I don't believe that you have the power of a magic light. Blair Blaze's eyes were filled with hostility. When a person took the magic light rank as their lifelong goal, they would go through untold hardships and finally reach it at the end of their lives. And now, in front of this person, a magic light rank in their 20s had appeared. The impact was hard to imagine. Whoosh! With the speed of a magic light level expert, Blair Blaze appeared in front of Gray like a phantom. The spear in his hand was wrapped in golden flames, which had reached the level of magic light. It quickly pierced towards Gray's chest. Whoosh! Gray's face under his battle armor was solemn. Although the black battle armor's defense was quite strong, it still didn't have the confidence to take a magic light level attack head-on. Facing the golden flame spear, the blue longsword in his hand was covered in dark green mist and met it head-on. Boom! The golden spear and dark green longsword fiercely collided, and a violent tremor spread out from the center of the collision. It wasn't like two weapons colliding, but a golden mountain and a dark green mountain colliding. The buildings in the palace collapsed as if they were weathered. The people from the Three Kingdoms who were watching the battle from afar couldn't help but retreat 1,000 meters to avoid being affected by the aftershocks of the battle. At the same time, their eyes were fixed on the two people clashing. In the area where the two of them collided, a strange scene appeared. One side turned into scorching hot magma, while the other side turned dark green. Everything melted and turned into dark green liquid. The scarlet-red liquid and the dark green liquid were clearly separated, forming a colorful lake filled with two different colors. Pop, pop, pop. Gray and Blair Blaze couldn't help but be forced back by the huge impact. How is this possible? Your battle strength. How can it be at the magic light level? The strong recoil showed that the power of Gray's attack was indeed at the magic light level. Blair Blaze's face was filled with shock, confusion, and disbelief. He had worked hard all his life to achieve this achievement, but it was achieved by someone in his 20s. This was a heavy blow to him. Of course, he could guess that Gray was able to reach the magic light level because he used some kind of blood skill. However, even if he used some kind of blood skill, it wasn't something he could tolerate. After all, it was magic light. I am the only magic light. After killing you, I will be the only magic light. Blair Blaze's eyes were bloodshot, and his left foot stomped on the air to stabilize his body. He exploded with a strong murderous intent as he pounced on the retreating Gray. Whoosh! Suddenly, a purple flame appeared, emitting a high temperature that wasn't any weaker than the golden flames. It attacked Blair Blaze. This was Daiphone Violet's attack with the help of a gold-tier weapon. Although she was also shocked that Gray actually had the battle strength of a magic light level, it was obviously a good thing. Against the magic light level Blair Blaze, she had almost no confidence in winning. However, with Gray, she finally had a better chance. She might even be able to defeat or kill Blair Blaze. TCH, Blair Blaze's rushing figure towards Gray was forced to stop. He hurriedly retreated to avoid the purple flames. The purple flames brushed past him, and he barely dodged them. The purple flames left behind a river of lava that spread all the way out of the palace. A magic light warrior who was on guard and good at speed had the ability to dodge even in the face of a magic light level attack. Gray's sneak attack was successful because the distance was extremely close, and his opponent didn't know of Gray's strength, so he wasn't on guard. Attack together. Daiphone Violet wasn't surprised that his attack was dodged. This was within her expectations. She nodded slightly to Gray and waved the golden sword in her hand. Once again, a purple flame attacked Blair Blaze. Unknowingly, her attitude towards Gray had changed from that of a junior to that of an equal. Everything was because of strength. Now, Gray had the strength to treat her as an equal. Understood. Gray responded and waved the longsword in his hand. A dark green giant blade slashed in the direction of Blair Blaze, who was dodging the purple flames. Puff! Even a magic light level expert who was good at speed couldn't completely dodge the attack when faced with the siege of 2 magic light levels. Although Blair Blaze's reaction was very fast, his right arm was still grazed by the dark green giant blade. A deep wound appeared on his arm. Blood flowed out, and a trace of strange dark green could be faintly seen in the blood. It was a combination of the 4 poison-type abilities of the magic poison dragon. It had poison characteristics. It's poisonous. Seeing the trace of dark green in the blood, Blair Blaze felt his body becoming more and more numb. His expression changed. Because the wound was on his back, and the magic light warrior's physique was strong and had a strong resistance to poison, he didn't immediately realize that he had been poisoned. Now that he was injured again, the poison had accumulated, and the wound had appeared on his right arm. He finally realized that he had been poisoned. You deserve to die. Blair Blaze's expression became extremely gloomy. The golden flames on his spear swallowed and turned into a giant golden flame claw. He slapped at Gray while he himself quickly rushed towards Gray. Judging that the Blood Fiend's ability contained poison, Gray's threat was far greater than Daiphone Violet's. He immediately decided to kill Gray first. Woo! The giant flame claw was like a golden cloud that enveloped Gray. With Gray's current speed, he naturally couldn't avoid it. The only way was to shatter the golden flame claw. Puff! His longsword swung up, and a giant dark green blade met the golden flame claw. The golden flame claw was immediately split in half and exploded into golden flames. They fell to the ground, leaving behind traces of melting. Whoosh! Just as Gray slashed his sword at the golden flame claw, a golden light shot towards Gray at an extremely fast speed. Upon closer inspection, he discovered that it wasn't a golden light, but Blair Blaze, who was holding a spear. On his spear, there was a golden light blooming. This was the origin of the golden light. The speed of a magic light class was simply too fast. Although Gray now had the battle prowess of a magic light class, in terms of speed, even with the boost from Fury, he was only comparable to a king who had undergone 2 metamorphoses. He was about to be pierced by the spear. Whoosh! At the critical moment, purple flames appeared and turned into a giant wall of purple flames. It blocked Gray and Blair Blaze. Raging flames swept out with his spear, instantly piercing through the wall of purple flames. However, in that instant of pause, Gray, who was originally extremely close to him, had already pulled away from him, and a giant dark green blade slashed towards him. Blair Blaze dodged and dodged the giant dark green blade. Before he could attack Gray again, a purple flame attacked him. He had no choice but to dodge again. Boom boom. Gray and Diphony Violet worked together to suppress Blair Blaze. Blair Blaze's body would occasionally be wounded. Although they weren't serious wounds, they undoubtedly aggravated his original injuries. In particular, Gray's attacks were poisonous. However, Blair Blaze, who was at a disadvantage, didn't look anxious. Instead, his eyes flashed like a wolf on the hunt. Chapter 566. I don't have much blood force left. Gray's face under his battle armor showed a trace of anxiety. 77 dus. He was only at the first stage of King class, but he was able to use his 4 mixed abilities to display the combat power of a thrice-transformed King class warrior. Naturally, he had to pay a price, and the price was that he consumed more blood force than an ordinary King class warrior. Of course, the consumption of blood force was not exaggerated. Even if he used his 4 mixed abilities, the consumption was only twice that of an ordinary King class warrior. Because of this, very few blood warriors could discover this weakness of his. However, when he used his 4 mixed abilities and blood berserk, the consumption of blood force became terrifying. He had only attacked about 20 times since the start of the battle, but his blood force was almost exhausted. Quietly retreating, Gray put some distance between himself and Blair Blaze, standing about 200 meters away from Blair Blaze. This distance was neither too close nor too far, ensuring that he could support Diphony Violet at any time and prevent Diphony Violet from bearing the pressure from Blair Blaze alone. He activated the purple ring on his finger, and a bottle of magic potion made of adamantine appeared in his hand. The words, "Advanced Recovery Potion," were engraved on the potion. This was a precious magic potion that could quickly recover King-class blood force and physical fatigue. Recovery potions could be made by ordinary master alchemists, but advanced recovery potions could only be made during the Empire. The advanced recovery potion in his hand was one of his gains from the graveyard. To be precise, he had obtained it from Niklos Blaze's runic portal bag after killing Niklos Blaze. Taking out the advanced recovery potion, Gray controlled the armor's face to disappear. He cut off the bottleneck of the advanced recovery potion and prepared to consume it to replenish his blood force. But at this moment, something strange happened. A dazzling light burst out from his eyes, and in an instant, Brer Rageflame's figure shot straight towards Gray. His speed exceeded the speed of sound, and the sound of a sonic boom could be heard in the air. "Gray, be careful! Be careful, dodge! Blair Blaze is coming for you!" The people of the 3 kingdoms who were watching this battle from afar, whether they were people Gray was familiar with or people who had never spoken to him before, all cried out anxiously, their faces filled with worry and anxiety. Normally, people who didn't come from the same kingdom as Gray and didn't have much interaction with Gray wouldn't care about Gray's life or death. They might even feel happy. The weakening of the other kingdoms was equivalent to the strengthening of their own kingdom. They were happy to see Gray die in battle. But not now. Facing Blair Blaze, who had suddenly become a magic light warrior, they were already on the same side as Gray. It could be said that they were grasshoppers tied to a string. If Gray died, they would die. If Gray won, they would live. Under such circumstances, they naturally hoped that Gray wouldn't die. They even hoped that he would bravely kill Blair Blaze. Not good. Everyone else could sense that Gray was in danger. Diphony Violet, who was so close to Gray, naturally sensed Gray's danger first. Whoosh! The long sword wrapped in purple flames slashed down. The purple flames turned into a tall wall that spread forward, intercepting Blair Blaze. Whoosh! The purple flames were like a stream of light. They were extremely fast, leaving behind a purple flame wall along the way. With the terrifying power of the magic light warrior, they intercepted Blair Blaze. If Blair Blaze didn't stop, he would hit this purple flame wall. If Blair Blaze stopped, the purple flame wall would be able to block Blair Blaze for a moment, buying time for Gray to take the potion. It's blocked. Not good. Jennifer Austin and Lennon Crimson, who were seriously injured and supported by the royal family of their respective kingdoms, caught sight of this scene and both of them let out a sigh of relief. In the next moment, the expressions on their faces turned into exclamations of surprise. In the eyes of the two, Blaze, who was rushing forward, didn't stop. Instead, he rushed forward while thrusting the spear in his hand. Whoosh! As he thrust out his spear, a golden sun shot forward. It was as if the sun had fallen from the sky, crashing into Gray. And just as the golden sun hit Gray, the purple flame wall hit Blaze. Blaze was drowned by the purple flames that reached the magic light warrior level. This lunatic! Diphony Violet was flustered and exasperated. Blaze would rather take the purple flames that reached the magic light warrior level head-on to attack Gray. This was something he didn't expect. Of course, even if he had thought of it, he wouldn't have been able to stop it. He now only hoped that Gray could miraculously block this attack. However, in his heart, he already didn't have much hope. This was because this was a magic light warrior level attack. Even if it were him, it was likely that he would be seriously injured and lose the ability to fight. He might even die immediately. Whoosh! As a magic light warrior level attack, the golden sun was too fast. Before Gray could bring the advanced recovery potion to his mouth, the golden sun had already hit Gray's body. Boom! The black armor had an unimaginable defense. It wasn't damaged by the golden sun, but the scorching heat and impact of the golden sun were too strong. The black armor couldn't completely block it. Suddenly, a part of the power passed through the armor to Gray's body. What was a magic light warrior level power? It was rumored that long ago, when this land was still the territory of the blood fiends and humans were reduced to food for the blood fiends, there was a type of blood fiend that reached the terrifying level. Every time they descended, they brought the most despairing destruction. They were the demons that humans didn't want to encounter. To humans, they were demons with black light. They would scatter the demonic black light wherever they descended, so they were called Magic Light. Magic Light, this was a name that contained the despair of humans. It represented a terrifying power that couldn't be matched. PFFF. Even if the black armor weakened the scorching heat and impact, Gray still couldn't help but feel as if he had been hit by a golden meteorite. His stomach churned and he felt a sweet taste in his throat. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, but it was immediately evaporated by the scorching heat. As for the advanced recovery potion in his hand, under the terrifying heat of the golden sun, the metal bottle melted and the medicinal liquid evaporated. It completely disappeared from his hand. Bang! Gray's body hit the ground, sending mud and debris flying. A huge crater appeared with Gray at the center. Then, the flying debris fell back and buried Gray in the rubble. Ha 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 ha, I'm the winner! Blaze, who had been attacked by the purple flames, climbed out of the lava. At this time, his entire body was covered in burns, and his face was charred black. As he spoke, charred black skin constantly fell off. He had taken a direct hit from the magic light warrior's purple flames, and his injuries weren't light. But in his opinion, it was completely worth it. He had paid the price of being injured to kill Gray Fergus, turning the battle back into a one-on-one. This was absolutely worth it. He was confident that even with his current injuries, he could defeat and kill Diphony Violet. It's still not certain who will win and who will lose. Diphony Violet's face was ashen. Using a golden weapon had consumed a lot of her own energy, but it wasn't as serious as Gray's. After all, he was a thrice metamorphosed king, and his blood energy was extremely large. Whoosh! The purple flames were extremely fast, like a stream of light. It left a river of lava on the ground as it attacked Blaze. Rageflame sneered. Golden flames gushed out from the shielded keyword and turned into a giant golden claw. It immediately blocked the purple flame. Then, his eyes overflowed with murderous intent as he quickly rushed towards Diphony Violet. First, he had been ambushed by Gray, and then he had taken a direct hit from Diphony Violet. His injuries weren't light, and with the effects of the poison, His speed wasn't as fast as before. But it didn't matter. With this speed, it was enough to kill Daiphone Violet. Whoosh! He appeared behind Daiphone Violet, and the blocked keyword stabbed towards Daiphone Violet's back. A golden sun burst out from the blocked keyword. Daiphone Violet was alert. Her golden blade was covered in purple flames, and she instinctively turned around and slashed backwards. Boom! 2 rays of light, one gold and one purple, collided. A terrifyingly high temperature filled the air, and a lake of lava appeared under their feet. Splat, splat. Daiphone Violet retreated in a slightly sorry state. She stepped into the lake of lava with 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow, and a sizzling sound could be heard from her feet. On the other side, Blair Blaze easily stabilized his body. His scorched face revealed a sinister smile, and he quickly rushed towards Daiphone Violet. The blocked keyword bloomed with golden light. Just as he had predicted, even if his body was heavily injured, his overall strength was still above Daiphone Violet's. In just a few exchanges, he had once again gained the absolute advantage. He would unify the 4 kingdoms and establish a kingdom comparable to an empire. As for Daiphone, Violet, and the other 3 kingdoms, they would turn into soil and rot in the ground. Whoosh! Suddenly, the ferocious smile on his face turned into shock. A dark green vortex appeared on the ground and swept towards him from below. It was as if a huge dark green devil was opening its ferocious mouth at him. There was no time to dodge, and he was already engulfed by the dark green vortex. His skin was quickly corroding, and his originally heavy injuries were quickly worsening. The most frightening thing was that the poison was continuously invading his body, and his body was becoming more and more numb. He tried his best to break free, but his numb body greatly weakened his strength. His movements were as powerless as a weakling's struggling. Although he stirred up waves, he was powerless to break free. He could only waste his energy in vain. When his energy was exhausted, he would be weak and die. Chapter 567. Bang! Blair Blaze, who was heavily injured and numb from the poison, fell from a height of several thousand meters. He crashed into the ruins of the palace, creating a crater in the ground. Falling from a height of several thousand meters had aggravated his injuries. His entire body was in pain and numbness. His body was bent over like a shrimp, and he didn't even have the strength to move his arms and legs. I almost died here. A huge figure over 2 meters tall approached Blair Blaze with a slightly strange gait. It was a figure dressed in black battle armor. It was gray. He had been injured badly by Blair Blaze's magic light level attack, but it wasn't enough to kill him. Although it was a magic light level attack, it was still greatly weakened by the black battle armor. It was far from enough to kill him, whose defense was comparable to a thrice metamorphosed king tier after Berserk. Of course, it was true that he was heavily injured. His body hurt with every step he took. It was so painful that he grimaced slightly. Some of his bones had probably been broken. Fortunately, he had swallowed many blood transformations and had a strong resistance to pain. That was why he wasn't affected too much. Of course, it was inevitable that his gait was a little strange. Buried in the ruins, he took out a bottle of high-grade recovery potion from his purple ring and swallowed it successfully, restoring his blood power. In fact, he had obtained 5 bottles of high-grade recovery potion from Niklos Blaze's spatial bag. Fortunately, the high-grade recovery potion hadn't been destroyed and there hadn't been any left. He took out another high-grade recovery potion and swallowed it. Then, he dug out the ruins with his bare hands and came to the surface. However, he didn't immediately rush out of the ruins. Instead, he dug a small hole and secretly observed, waiting for an opportunity to attack. Since Blair Blaze thought he was dead, he naturally had to take advantage of it. This was why the dark green whirlwind had suddenly attacked Blair Blaze. Die! Quickly approaching Blair Blaze, who was lying on the ground with his body bent over, Gray's long sword, which was shrouded in dark green mist, quickly pierced towards the heart of Blair Blaze, who had been severely injured and whose body had been numbed by the poison. Although Blair Blaze was heavily injured, he didn't dare to be careless. He didn't dare to give his opponent a chance to breathe. After all, his opponent was the first magic light tier player in 1,000 years. He didn't know how fast his opponent could recover. It would be bad if he had a chance to breathe and recover. No, I cannot die yet. Blair Blaze opened his eyes slightly, and the scenery in his eyes became blurry. It was as if he was looking through a glass covered in frost. Seeing the sword coming at him, the heavily injured Blair Blaze seemed to have been injected with vitality. He twisted his body and rolled a few times, avoiding Gray's sword. "You can still move?" When his sword was dodged, Gray's expression changed slightly. He took a step forward and caught up with Blair Blaze, his long sword stabbing down once more. Pooh! Another long sword came at him. Blair Blaze wanted to turn around and dodge again, but the action just now had exhausted all his strength. He no longer had the strength to turn around and dodge. He didn't even have the strength to move a finger. He could only watch helplessly as the dark green longsword pierced through his chest. It pierced through his charred flesh and through the gap between his ribs, piercing his heart. Cough, cough. With his heart pierced, Blair Blaze spat out a mouthful of blood. It was dark green with some black charred matter. It was his body tissue that had been burned. Blair Blaze felt his body gradually becoming cold. His consciousness was gradually leaving him. He forced himself to stay awake. At this moment, the strongest emotion in his mind was shouted out in a hoarse voice. "I am the first magic light warrior in 1,000 years. How can I lose? I can't die yet. I haven't unified the 4 kingdoms. I haven't established an empire." After succeeding, Gray quickly pulled out his sword and retreated. He kept his guard up and looked coldly at Blair Blaze. Gray didn't think that Blair Blaze's dream was laughable. In fact, if Blair Blaze didn't die, it would be very possible for him to achieve it. As the first magic light warrior in 1,000 years, Blair Blaze did indeed have the strength to unify the 4 kingdoms and establish an empire. The main reason why he and Iphone Violet were able to defeat him was because of the sneak attack. If it wasn't for the sneak attack, the final victory would have been Blair Blaze. He and Iphone Violet weren't true magic light warriors. Moreover, they had the drawback of consuming blood energy very quickly. Under normal circumstances, the two of them would have lost. All of this was because Blair Blaze had been too confident. After becoming the first magic light warrior in 1,000 years, his self-confidence had swelled. He hadn't immediately fled after being injured by Gray's sneak attack. If Blair Blaze had fled immediately, it would have been impossible to kill him. Neither Gray nor Iphone Violet would have been able to catch up to Blair Blaze, whose speed had reached the magic light level. Blair Blaze had been too confident in himself. He was confident that as a magic light warrior, he could defeat both Gray and Iphone Violet, even if it was 1 against 2. This confidence had ultimately led to his defeat. Pa. Iphone Violet walked over, looking at Blair Blaze with a complicated expression. There was envy and joy in her eyes. Envy that Blair Blaze had become the first magic light warrior in 1,000 years. Becoming a magic light warrior was also his lifelong goal. However, Blair Blaze had achieved it, while he was still far from achieving it. He was glad that he and Gray had worked together to kill Blair Blaze. Otherwise, there would only be one Blaze Empire left on the continent. I haven't established. Blood flowed from the hole in his chest. Blair Blaze's eyelids were trembling. They were about to close uncontrollably, but he forced them open. As he lay dying, he seemed to see himself destroying the Purple Moon, Crimson, and Gem kingdoms, unifying the 4 kingdoms, and bringing the Flame Kingdom to unprecedented heights, becoming a kingdom comparable to the empire of 1,000 years ago. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. His body finally lost its strength and went limp. He laid in the ruins of the Flame Kingdom with his eternal dream of an empire. At this time, The people of the three kingdoms had also rushed over. Along the way, they looked at the lava lakes and bottomless trenches that could be seen everywhere on the battlefield. Their faces couldn't help but reveal deep shock. The impact of looking at it from a distance was not as strong as looking at it from up close. Because it was too far away, one's senses would subconsciously feel that it was illusory and unreal, greatly reducing the impact of looking at it. Only by looking at the lava lakes up close and seeing the lava bubbling in the lakes, feeling the terrifying heat, and standing at the edge of an abyss that one could fall into at any time, could one truly understand what kind of battle this was. Your Excellency Grey. Looking at the Grey standing beside Blair Blaze's corpse, the people of the Purple Moon Kingdom had deep pride on their faces. This was because Grey was also a citizen of the Purple Moon Kingdom like them. On the other hand, the people of the Crimson and Jewel Kingdom had awe and fear in their eyes. They were in awe of Grey's powerful strength, and at the same time, they were also afraid of Grey's powerful strength. Although he couldn't last long, the battle strength that Grey displayed was undoubtedly at the magic light level. Moreover, unlike Dyphony Violet, he didn't use a gold-tier weapon. He had achieved this with his own strength and blood skills. This kind of strength made them respect and fear him. Although he wasn't as strong as Blair Blaze, none of them could stop him if he really wanted to attack them. Grey didn't become arrogant because of his strength. After nodding at the person who greeted him, he took out a rune space bag and put away Blair Blaze's corpse. The corpse of a magic light warrior was obviously of great value to him, who had the ability to control corpses. Naturally, he wouldn't be polite. Of course, if he could use the resurrection ability to resurrect the corpse, its value would be maximized. However, according to his estimation, if he really wanted to resurrect the corpse, he would have to kill all the people he had resurrected. Grey wouldn't do such a thing. After all, the people and blood fiends that he had resurrected had become living beings that were deeply dependent on him. He couldn't take away their lives for such a reason. The Flame Kingdom's royal treasury has been discovered. In the distance, someone discovered the 100-meter-deep gully that Grey's sword had created. Seeing the various treasures within the gully, they couldn't help but cry out in surprise. Hearing the cry of surprise, everyone's hearts burned with passion. They couldn't help but rush towards the royal treasury of the Flame Kingdom. The wealth of a kingdom's treasury was extremely terrifying. Even if they couldn't obtain it, just a glance would be worth bragging about for the rest of their lives. Grey didn't follow them. The dull pain in his body reminded him that he was still injured. His top priority now was to use the reverse nurturing ability to heal his injuries. In the treasury, the only things that caught his eye were the blood fiend's blood and magic potions. He had already put away these two items. Moreover, he believed that when the three kingdoms divided the treasury, he definitely wouldn't be left out. He still had this much confidence. A pair of greenish-black wings sprouted from his back. He flew out of the capital and landed in a forest outside. Using the reverse nurturing ability, a large amount of green mist floated out from the surrounding trees and enveloped him. Being enveloped by the green mist, he immediately felt a cooling sensation. The burns on his body were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The most serious part of his body, the broken bones, were also connected under the effect of a force. Then, they were covered by the green mist and healed. In just a few minutes, the injuries on his body had completely healed. His body was restored to its peak condition. Grey chose a new forest and took out Blair Blaze's corpse. However, just as he was about to use the corpse-controlling ability, he paused. Blair Blaze's value wasn't just this corpse. Chapter 568. Using the dark green mist, Grey corroded a deep hole in a low mountain. Carrying Blair Blaze's body, he walked into the hole. Blair Blaze's value wasn't just in his body. It also included the soul that had yet to shatter and disappear in this body. Pulling out the dagger tied to his leg, Grey released all the ghosts he currently controlled and removed his control over them. Pitter-patter, patter, patter! Suddenly, one by one, the ghosts emitting a hazy white light dissipated like white fireworks after he removed his control over them. If he wanted to control a magic light rank specter, Gray judged that with his current specter abilities, he could only control one specter, so he removed his control over the other specters. Ghosts, after the death of a person or animal, were creatures formed by the soul under special circumstances. It was debatable whether they could even be called living creatures. They did not have the thoughts of when they were alive, only unconscious instincts. Gray did not have any psychological burden to remove his control over them and let them dissipate. After all, they did not have consciousness, and it was debatable whether they were living creatures or not. Ghost ability. Bending down, Gray pressed one hand on Blair Blaze's body and used his ghost ability. His soul power invaded Blair Blaze's body in a special form. Then, under the effect of this special form of soul power, Blair Blaze's soul began to transform into a ghost. This was a change of attribute. Although it was also a soul power, the soul and the ghost's soul power were obviously different. The soul would dissipate after the death of the body it resided in, but the ghost could exist without the body. To some extent, the difference between the two was whether they were stable after leaving the body. Gray's soul power continued to be consumed, and the ghost ability continued to operate. At first, Blair Blaze's body only emitted a faint, almost invisible white light. But later, the white light became stronger and stronger, and finally became a hazy white light. A hazy white light floated out from Blair Blaze's corpse and turned into a humanoid figure. This figure's body shape was similar to Blair Blaze's, but it was impossible to see its face clearly because the face of a ghost was extremely blurry. A magic light specter. Looking at the specter formed from Blair Blaze's soul that stood quietly in front of him, Gray was quite satisfied. A magic light ghost might not be as powerful as a magic light warrior, but in special situations, it might not be any weaker than a magic light warrior. After ordering the magic light grade specter to enter the dagger, Gray sheathed the dagger and began to use his corpse control ability on Blair Blaze's corpse. More than 10 minutes later, Blair Blaze's corpse stood up again. Using the reverse nurturing ability, the injuries on his body instantly recovered. His pierced heart was repaired, and the charred marks all over his body disappeared. He was restored to his original state. After putting the corpse into a special rune space bag, Gray leisurely returned to the Flame Kingdom's palace, which had been turned into ruins due to the battle. The Flame Kingdom's treasury had been guarded by the three kingdoms, and they had sent people to count the wealth within. With the wealth accumulated by the Flame Kingdom's royal family over 1,000 years, it would be difficult to count all the wealth within without a few days. He was about to find a place to rest. After the battle, he was quite tired, but when he heard a voice in his mind, he couldn't help but twitch his mouth and walk in a direction. In a corner of the palace ruins, a man was surrounded by 3 desolate blood warriors with murderous intent. "It's a misunderstanding. I'm not your enemy. I'm Lord Gray's subordinate." Bart spread out his hands, cold sweat dripping down his back. He was at the first level of the desolate level, and he was surrounded by 3 desolate blood warriors. If he really attacked, he would definitely die. "Don't try to lie to us. Someone has already confirmed that you're from the Flame Fang." One of the 3 desolate blood warriors sneered. At first, when the other party claimed to be Lord Gray's subordinate, they didn't suspect him and thought that he was really one of them. But not long ago, they captured a member of the Flame Fang and interrogated him. They found out that he was a member of the Flame Fang, so they hurried over to kill him. "How dare you lie that you're Lord Gray's subordinate? I won't forgive you." Another desolate blood warrior's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He was from the Purple Moon Kingdom and was extremely respectful of Lord Gray, who was also from the Purple Moon Kingdom. This person actually used Lord Gray's name as a cover, which made him extremely angry. "Although I'm a member of the Flame Fang, I'm indeed Lord Gray's subordinate." Bart wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He felt like he couldn't defend himself. "You're courting death. How dare you quibble, and you're even using Lord Grey's name." The three of them couldn't help but glare angrily, the murderous intent in their eyes firmly locked onto Bart. This time, Grey and Diphony Violet had joined forces to kill the magic light grade Blair Blaze. It could be said that they had resolved an unprecedented crisis for the three kingdoms. Even if they weren't from the Purple Moon Kingdom, they were still filled with respect and gratitude towards Grey. "Ahem, he's indeed my subordinate." Grey appeared and coughed lightly. Hearing Bart's cry for help in his mind, he immediately rushed over with his spiritual senses and found that Bart was in a bad situation. He quickly appeared to help Bart out of the predicament. At the same time, he felt slightly ashamed. After a series of battles, he had almost forgotten about Bart. Lord Grey. Seeing Grey suddenly appear, the three desolate blood warriors couldn't help but show respect on their faces. Then, they spoke with slight panic. "Lord Grey, is he really your subordinate?" "Ah, Lord Grey, please don't misunderstand. We don't mean to doubt your words. It's just that we received news that he's from the Inferno Fong." Could he have secretly betrayed Lord Grey? "He was originally from the Inferno Fong, but later joined my side. He lurked in the Inferno Fong and specifically provided me with information about the Flame Kingdom." Grey thought of a reasonable explanation. Of course, this explanation wasn't without flaws. There were still many loopholes. The biggest loophole was how Grey made a member of the Inferno Fong, who was like a loyal dog of the Flame Kingdom, join his side. It should be known that the selection of members of an organization directly under the royal family, like the Inferno Fong, was extremely strict. It was almost impossible for there to be a betrayal. However, with Grey's current strength, he naturally didn't need to explain too much to others. No one or force had the right to make him explain. "I'm sorry, Lord Grey. We misunderstood." The three of them apologized. "It's fine. I'll take him away then." Grey shook his head slightly and called out to Bart before turning to leave. Bart hurriedly followed Grey, his back ramrod straight. A deep sense of pride welled up spontaneously. He was Lord Grey's subordinate. Although he was resurrected, he was still a human. He had his own emotions and naturally hoped that the person he followed was an amazing person. And Grey's battle record of killing the Magic Light Warrior today made him feel deeply proud. After resolving Bart's crisis, Grey was just about to find a place to rest when a middle-aged man saw him and greeted him with joy. Grey knew that his rest would probably be delayed again. Sure enough, the middle-aged man quickly walked up to him and performed a standard aristocratic salute that a subordinate would use to greet a superior, respectfully opening his mouth to speak. "Lord Grey, Lord Tefuni invites you to attend a meeting. Lead the way." Grey gestured for him to lead the way. Under the middle-aged man's lead, he entered a house at the edge of the Flame Kingdom's palace that had yet to collapse. "Your Excellency Grey. Your Excellency Grey, you're here." In the room, there were more than 10 king-class experts from the three kingdoms. When they saw Grey arrive, they all greeted him politely. Grey responded to them one by one and sat next to Francis in the Purple Moon Kingdom. As a king-class warrior, Francis also had the right to participate in this kind of meeting. He wore a well-ironed suit and placed his hands on his knees. Clearly, he was under a lot of pressure to participate in this kind of meeting for the first time. "You're finally here." Seeing Grey arrive, Francis let out an imperceptible sigh. As the youngest person present, he was under a lot of pressure. Now that Grey was here, it would be better. In terms of age, Grey was younger than him. Grey shrugged. Although it was also his first time participating in this kind of meeting like Francis, he didn't feel too much pressure because there was almost no one present who could give him pressure. "All right, since everyone is here, let's begin." Diphony Violet coughed lightly and swept her gaze across everyone present. "The Flame Kingdom has been destroyed. The territory left behind by the Flame Kingdom must be taken over by our three kingdoms as soon as possible. We must control it before panic and chaos occurs. I have no objections, but the key is how to divide it. Lennon Scarlett's eyes flashed as he spoke. Although he was heavily injured and was still wrapped in bandages, Lennon Scarlett still participated in this meeting because it was a meeting that involved a lot of benefit. He was a little worried that the other king-class warriors of the Scarlet Kingdom would not be able to handle it. After all, the Purple Moon Kingdom was too powerful now. Not only did they have a gold weapon, but they also had Gray, who did not have a gold weapon but was not much different from someone who had one. To be honest, he was jealous of the Purple Moon Kingdom's luck. Why did a genius like Gray Fergus not appear in the Scarlet Kingdom but in the Purple Moon Kingdom? Indeed, we must set the borders as soon as possible. Jennifer Austin, who was also heavily injured but insisted on participating in the meeting, was also slightly moved. She had the same reason as Lennon Scarlett, which forced her to participate in this meeting with a heavily injured body. Chapter 569. A huge detailed map of the four kingdoms was spread out on the conference table. In the hall, except for Gray, almost everyone's eyes became fiery. They all stood up and approached the map. For a kingdom, one could never have too much territory, especially for a kingdom like the three kingdoms that had existed for thousands of years. After thousands of years of enfeoffment, the nobles of the three kingdoms had reached the limit of their capacity. The direct territory of the royal family had also shrunk to a rather awkward situation. They urgently needed more territory to reward new nobles and enrich the direct territory of the royal family. The Flame Kingdom that had been destroyed was that cake that the three kingdoms could divide and fight over. The east of the Pierce Mountains, west of the Ryan River, belongs to the Purple Moon Kingdom. Dyphony Violet stared at the map with a fiery gaze. She stretched out her old and skinny finger and pointed at two places on the map. Her tone was firm. No, this division is too disadvantageous for the Scarlet Kingdom. I think the Carney Mountains should be the dividing line. Lennon Scarlett's heavily injured body became unusually agile at this time. He stared at the map with a fiery gaze and pointed at a mountain range east of the Pierce Mountains, enclosing a large piece of fertile land into the territory of the Scarlet Kingdom. I don't agree either. I think the Lost Swamp should be the dividing line. Jennifer Austin also showed agility that was not commensurate with her heavily injured state. Although she was a woman, her voice was firm. She expanded the territory of the Jewel Kingdom to the east of the Ryan River. The three of them did not give in and argued fiercely. The other king-class warriors of the three kingdoms also joined in from time to time, spitting saliva everywhere. This was a fierce confrontation. Surrounding the territory left behind after the destruction of the Flame Kingdom, the three kingdoms could be said to be red in the face and red in the face. The three allies who had a harmonious relationship with each other were full of hostility, as if they would fight at any time. Gray regretted not refusing to participate in the meeting almost as soon as it began. Participating in such a meeting was simply asking for trouble. The main purpose of his participation in this meeting was to inform the three kingdoms about the current strength of the Fifth Force and his concerns about it. While this group of people was arguing, Gray told them about his battle with the Fifth Power and his worries. Unfortunately, his worries were not taken seriously by the three kingdoms. Although the three kingdoms were very surprised that the fifth faction had a second thrice-transformed king-class warrior, their minds were filled with thoughts of how to divide up the territories left behind by the Flame Kingdom. Although they said they would investigate the fifth faction in detail, Gray could clearly feel that their attention was limited. The gold weapons were what they relied on. It was because of the gold weapons that they dared to do so. In their opinion, even a thrice-metamorphosed king level would find it difficult to fight against a gold weapon. According to common sense, this was indeed the truth. Even thrice-metamorphosed king-level warriors would not have the slightest chance of winning against a gold weapon. In addition, with Gray's current strength after using his blood skill, there was indeed no need to be too afraid of the fifth faction. However, deep in Gray's heart, there was always a sense of danger. He always felt that he had underestimated the fifth faction. The fifth faction was not simple. It was very likely that they would become a great threat after the Flame Kingdom. The degree of their threat might even be higher than the Flame Kingdom. In the end, the first meeting ended without any substantial progress. The meeting of the three kingdoms to divide up the Flame Kingdom was obviously going to be a protracted battle. Gray did not plan to participate in the following meeting. It was really unnecessary. On the other hand, Francis was very excited. As the future successor to the throne of the Purple Moon Kingdom, he was obviously very interested in this aspect. He was very involved in this fight for benefit. In a manor on the west side of the Flame Kingdom's capital city, the 4 members of the fifth faction who had fled the Flame Kingdom's palace had returned. This manor was their intelligence base and foothold in the Flame Kingdom. After resting for a full day, the 4 of them finally recovered. On one hand, it was because of the injuries on their bodies. On the other hand, it was because of the poison in Gray's attack. To be able to affect strong bodies like theirs, the poison could be said to be very strong. I didn't think there would be such a powerful person. Faust's expression was sullen and serious. Because everyone present was familiar with him, he took off his black mask to reveal a short man. His eyebrows were extremely thick, as if they were smeared with ink. He was sullen because he had been forced to hand over his runic storage pouch. This was an absolute humiliation. He was also serious because Gray's combat strength had reached the level of magic light without the help of a gold weapon. This was simply inconceivable. What made him even more worried was that Magic Light's combat strength was enough to injure them even with their powerful defenses. Their opponent was already enough to threaten them. This person is really frightening. Meryl's expression was just as serious. Her beautiful face was also solemn because of her serious expression. Of the 4 people present, she had the most contact with Gray Fergus, so she understood how frightening he was the most. He had a frightening growth rate that she had never seen before. In less than 2 years, he had grown from a king-tier cultivator to one whose combat strength was comparable to that of Magic Light. Her opponent's growth rate shocked her. He really is a frightening person. The middle-aged man in the lead, Derek, tapped the table with his right index finger, his eyebrows tightly knitted together. Not only does he have a mixed ability, but he also has a blood skill. Mixed ability? Mixed ability should be restricted by the planar origin formation, right? How could he possibly have it? The man who had taken off his gray mask, Old Joe, was puzzled. He was a man with a thin face and a goatee. His mixed ability is obtained through his affinity with many different bloodlines. It shouldn't be restricted by the planar origin formation. The middle-aged man, Derek, picked up a piece of information from the table. This was something that he had sent people to investigate after returning yesterday. It recorded Gray's information and his experiences in the past few years. Because Gray hadn't been famous back then, it wasn't something that could be investigated in a short amount of time. Affinity physique? This guy actually has an affinity physique? Faust's thick eyebrows twitched as he cried out in shock. Meryl and Old Joe's reactions weren't as great as Faust's, but their eyes were wide with disbelief. An affinity physique was a physique that made people go crazy with jealousy. People with this physique were invincible in the same realm, and many of them even had the strength to fight those with higher cultivation realms. It was also rumored that this physique was very helpful in breaking through to the highest realm. Quite a few of the highest existences possessed this physique. This kind of physique made people jealous, but the chances of it appearing were also very low. They didn't expect to find one in such a barren place. It made them feel like they were wasting a treasure. Gray Fergus is a huge threat, and our troubles don't end there. According to reliable sources, Blair Blaze broke through and became a Magic Light warrior. Even though he was killed by Gray Fergus and Diphony Violet, there is no doubt that he became a Magic Light warrior. Derek glanced at the 3 of them and said in a low voice, "What? Blair Blaze became a magic light warrior? Meryl's red lips parted as shock appeared in her eyes. Compared to Blair Blaze being killed by Grey and Diphony Violet, she was more concerned about the fact that Blair Blaze had become a magic light warrior. How could this be? Weren't the magic light warriors restricted by the planar origin formation? How could someone break through? Faust and Old Joe were also concerned about the fact that Blair Blaze had become a magic light warrior. The two of them stood up in shock, their eyes filled with shock and confusion. The planar origin formation's effects might be weakening. It should be that the planar origin formation is about to dry up, Derek said with a serious expression. If the planar origin formation is about to dry up, doesn't that mean the time will be brought forward? But our current strength isn't enough to carry out the final blood sacrifice. Anxiety appeared on the faces of Meryl and the others. At the rate their strength was increasing, it was very likely that they wouldn't be able to recover to their peak state before the planar origin formation dried up. If this continues, it's very likely that we won't have enough time. The only thing we can do now is to give me all the resources you've plundered and help me recover to the realm of magic light. Then, with the power of magic light, we can directly plunder the three kingdoms' royal families, Derek said in a heavy voice. I have no objections. I have no objections either. Meryl, Old Joe, and Faust looked at each other. They all knew the severity of the matter and nodded in agreement. In the basement of Fergus Castle, a flash of light appeared. On a purple formation pattern, 4 figures appeared in the basement. 2 men and 2 women. The 2 men were Grey and Bart, while the 2 women were Sophia and Hylia. After learning that Grey was preparing to return to the Purple Moon Kingdom, Sophia and Hylia, who knew that Grey had mastered spatial teleportation, immediately requested to return together. After all, it would save them a lot of time. This is Fergus Castle? After leaving the basement, the 3 of them walked along the castle's corridor. Hylia Violet looked curiously at the Fergus Castle in front of her. Her heart was filled with curiosity about the Fergus Castle that could nurture Grey. This should be a castle that was newly built in recent years. Sophia had been to Fergus Castle before, so she could tell at a glance that the current castle was not the one she had been to before. It is indeed a castle that was newly built in recent years. A few years ago, it was attacked by an enemy. In that attack, the old castle was destroyed. Grey nodded and explained. His thoughts couldn't help but recall himself a few years ago. At that time, he had to use all his means to face the attacks of the barbarian blood warriors. Even so, he still couldn't protect the castle and it was destroyed in the battle. And now, let alone a single barbarian blood warrior, even if several king-class warriors attacked, they wouldn't be able to harm Fergus Castle at all. Comparing before and after, the increase in his strength was obvious. Chapter 570. Fergus Castle hadn't changed much in the 2 months since they'd left, and there weren't any clans that were foolish enough to provoke the Fergus family. It was good enough that the Fergus family didn't bully other clans nowadays, and there weren't many who dared to bully the Fergus family or the Fergus family. Even if Grey's strength wasn't counted, the Fergus family now had 2 king-class combatants. One was the king-class warrior Barnet Naim from the Nahum family, and the other was the king-class blood beast Frost King Beast. Usually, when a king-class warrior attacked, the other party would be at a disadvantage. Greetings, Your Highnesses Sophia and Hylia. The introduction of Sophia and Hylia to the Fergus family immediately caused a wave of nervousness and apprehension in the Fergus family. Even the usually audacious Sarah behaved herself, afraid of angering the two. The two's identities were too honorable. Even though the Fergus family had come into contact with many of the kingdom's nobles, they had never come into contact with people of such noble status. Sophia had come once, but she didn't reveal her identity at the time. Even Grey didn't know who she was then, let alone the Fergus family. Everyone, there's no need to be like this. We're both Grey's friends, and we're visiting as friends this time. Seeing the Fergus family's reaction, Sophia and Hilya couldn't help but smile wryly in their hearts. The person with the real status is right beside you. This time, Grey and Lord Tiffany had joined forces to kill Blair Blaze. Grey's strength and achievements could be said to be unprecedented since the founding of the Purple Moon Kingdom. The Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family was now having a headache over how to reward Grey. The Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family was very anxious about how to reward Grey, fearing that the reward would be too low and cause Grey's dissatisfaction. When the time came, they believed that the Jewel Kingdom and the Scarlet Kingdom would be more than happy to step in and recruit Grey. After leaving Sophia and Hilya to stay and play in Fergus Castle for a few days, Grey used spatial teleportation to send them back to the capital. Then, Grey appeared in Sydney City. Sydney City was a city built by the Sydney Marquis family when they were first in theft. After the Sydney family's repeated expansions, it finally became a city with a population of more than 1 million. This was the foundation of the entire Sydney family. It was the city that the Sydney family had managed for generations. There's a lot less people. Walking on the streets of the city, Grey felt a sense of desolation. The city's population had obviously decreased a lot, and the most obvious feeling was that there were fewer pedestrians on the streets. Although the Sydney family had not been destroyed, and there were still the 3 siblings, Zero, Polly, and Darren, it was undeniable that the Sydney family was no longer as prosperous as it used to be. This was a city built with the Sydney family as its foundation. The Sydney family was powerful and could attract many chambers of commerce, so the city naturally prospered. The Sydney family declined and could not attract chambers of commerce, so the city naturally declined day by day. Grey sighed softly. Seeing the once prosperous city deteriorate day by day, he felt some pain in his heart. However, he was powerless to change anything. He could protect Zero and the other 2 from being attacked by enemies, but he could not restore a city that was deteriorating day by day to its former glory. After passing through several streets, a castle appeared in front of Grey. From the square in front of the gate, the towering walls, and the buildings inside, it could be seen that this was a newly built castle. 2 armored guards stood at the gate of the castle. They looked rather young, even a little immature. They should have been recruited and trained by the Sydney family in the past 2 years. Apart from 3 lucky survivors, all the guards who had been trained died in that disaster. "Sir, may I know what's the matter?" Grey did not take an exquisite carriage, nor did he ride a fine warhorse. He walked over on foot, but the 2 guards did not look down on Grey because of this. Instead, one of them came forward very politely and asked Grey about his whereabouts. Although it was not deliberate, at Grey's level and status, even a casual set of clothes was definitely extremely high-end. Naturally, they would not look down on him. In fact, when the 2 guards saw Grey's arrival, their eyes could even be described as shocked. Although Grey did not take a carriage or ride a warhorse, the clothes he wore were of such high quality that they had only seen him a few times in their years as guards. As the face of a family, they had received training on how to determine the status of nobles from their family insignia and clothing. If they were not mistaken, Lin Li's gown was sewn with moon-white silk that was said to be worth an inch of gold. The triangular buttons on his gown were all polished with deep sapphires, which were the rarest of sapphires. Even the Marquis, Miss Polly, and young Master Darren only had one set of gowns that were as valuable as this one, and they would only wear it on festive occasions. Since Linley actually walked over in such a gown, it was very likely that this gown was a normal outfit for him when he went out. One could imagine that his status was not ordinary. "I am Grey Fergus, and I'm here to visit Marquis Sydney. Please inform him." Grey was not arrogant, and instead very courteously expressed his intentions to the 2 guards. Grey had always been polite and courteous to the Sydney family, because when he was still weak, he had indeed received a lot of preferential treatment from the Sydney family. "Haha, I was wondering why my eyelids were twitching today. So it's because of you." Not long after, Gray met with Zeloyan, Polly, and Darren in the living room. After not seeing them for a long time, Zeloyan and Darren had become more mature, and there was an additional mature and steady aura around them. Polly was wearing a blue-sleeved white dress, and her chest was firm, and her waist was slender, which made her look even more beautiful. The three of them were very enthusiastic about Gray's arrival. The Nahum family had not been exterminated because of Gray, and the Nahum family, whose strength had been severely weakened, had not been suppressed or assassinated by their enemy families because of Gray. "I heard that you went to the Flame Kingdom. Why are you back?" Zeloyan asked curiously. The conscription of the Flame Kingdom a week ago had caused a huge commotion, and it was difficult for him not to know about it. The Sidney family should have been included in the conscription, but surprisingly, the royal family did not conscript the Sidney family. To be honest, he was relieved to know that the Sidney family had not been conscripted. The Sidney family could no longer withstand any torment. "The matter over there has been resolved, so I came back." Gray smiled. The Sidney family had not been conscripted because of him. He had made a request to the royal family after considering the Sidney family's situation. The royal family had given him some face. After all, the Sidney family could not send out any powerful forces, so they might as well give him some face. "It has been resolved. How is the Flame Kingdom now?" Gray had used spatial teleportation to return, and his speed was faster than the messenger bird. Therefore, the news of the Flame Kingdom's destruction had not reached the Purple Moon Kingdom. The three of them did not know that the Flame Kingdom had been destroyed. The Flame Kingdom is no more. Although some members of the Flame Kingdom's royal family are still on the run, the Flame Kingdom is no more. Greg said with a smile. "What? The Flame Kingdom is no more? The Flame Kingdom has been destroyed?" Zeloyan and the other two were shocked, and their eyes were about to pop out. Although the three kingdoms had joined forces to attack the Flame Kingdom, the three of them had never thought that the three kingdoms would be able to destroy the Flame Kingdom. The Flame Kingdom had always given them an impression of being too powerful. They had more than a dozen Light King-class experts, and the three kingdoms combined did not have that many. "Yeah." Gray nodded. His gaze swept across the three of them, and he smiled mysteriously. "This time, I am here to fulfill my promise." "Fulfill your promise?" Zeloyan and the other two were puzzled. They did not immediately react to Gray's promise. It was not that they had forgotten, but because they knew very well how powerful the King of Assassins was. Not only was he a King-class expert, but he was also a King-class expert who had undergone a metamorphosis. In their opinion, even if Gray could kill the King of Assassins, it would definitely be many years later. Gray took out a rune portal bag. The next moment, a corpse was placed on a red woolen carpet in the hall. Seeing the corpse suddenly appear, the three of them were shocked at first. They did not understand why Gray had suddenly taken out a corpse. However, when they saw the corpse's face, their eyes instantly turned red. "The King of Assassins. Theodore?" The three of them clenched their fists and looked at the corpse with bloodshot eyes. They wanted to believe it but did not dare to. It was all too surreal. Of the three of them, only Zeloyan had seen the King of Assassins with his own eyes. Polly and Darren had not. When the King of Assassins had attacked the Sidney family, the old Marquis had immediately arranged for them to escape through a secret passage. They had not seen the King of Assassins. If they had, they would not have survived until now. It was impossible to escape from the hands of a King-class expert. However, they had seen a portrait of the King of Assassins and had long since imprinted his face in their minds. They had even dreamed of him from time to time in their nightmares. Thus, even if there was a hideous frozen wound on his face, they could immediately recognize him. However, the King of Assassins had undergone a metamorphosis. They did not dare to believe that the person in front of them was really the King of Assassins. After all, he was the King of Assassins. As a King-class expert who had undergone a metamorphosis, how could he be killed so easily? The three of them almost thought that they were in a dream. They did not know how many times they had had such a dream, but every time they woke up, they would regretfully discover that it was only a dream. Chapter 571. Is this really the King of Assassins? Polly's eyes were red as she took a few steps forward to the corpse of the King of Assassins, Theodore. She stared at him without blinking, afraid that she would wake up from her dream if she blinked. Although the King of Assassins had died not long ago, his corpse had not decomposed because it had been placed in Gray's ruined space bag. Even the smell of blood on his body had not dissipated. However, she did not care at all. Her eyes were filled with hatred and elation. Zeroing and Darren were in a similar situation. They immediately rushed to the corpse of the King of Assassins and stared at it with hatred and elation. It's really the King of Assassins, Theodore. Zeroing had seen the King of Assassins once in the Jewel Kingdom. He was very sure that the person in front of him was the King of Assassins. Die, die, die. Darren could not hold it in any longer. He stepped forward and stomped on the corpse of the King of Assassins repeatedly as though he had gone mad. It was this person who had taken away his originally happy family, and had taken away his father and mother, who had scolded him for being a good-for-nothing, but loved him dearly. Zeroing clenched his fists tightly, his nails digging deep into his flesh. Fresh blood had already seeped out. His expression kept changing as he tried his best to hold it in. Polly had a smile on her face, but her tears could not stop flowing. She had not shed a single tear after her parents had been killed. She had pretended to be strong because she knew that as one of the three remaining members of the Sidney family, she had to be strong. Tears could not bring about anything. Only by being strong could she and her elder brother pull the Sidney family together again. But now, she could no longer hold back her tears. They flowed down her face. Gray looked at the three of them quietly and did not disturb them. He had already dispersed the aura of the King of Assassins beforehand. Otherwise, the three of them might not even be able to get close to the corpse of the King of Assassins. Thank you, Gray. After a long while, the three of them recovered from their loss of composure and looked at Gray with gratitude. The old Marquis has treated me well. This is what I should do. Gray shook his head. Elder brother, chop off his head and use it as a sacrifice to the dead members of the Sidney family. Darren's eyes flashed with hatred as he spoke. Zeroing nodded and pulled out the knife at his waist. He walked to the corpse of the King of Assassins and covered it with a layer of golden light. However, his all-out attack, which could even break a steel pillar, seemed to have hit a diamond. It did not leave a single wound. Instead, the impact caused his hand to ache. Holding the King of Assassins' head, the four of them left the castle. After passing through several streets, they finally arrived at an extremely bleak place. In the middle of this bleak place was a lonely hill full of broken walls. This was the old site of the Sidney family castle. Walking up the hill, they saw a huge stone tablet that was a few meters tall in the middle of the ruins. The words, Sidney family's tomb, were carved on it. This was the tomb of the old Marquis and his wife, as well as the many victims of the Sidney family. Gray had people build the tombstone. Because the corpses were too badly damaged, it was impossible to tell who was who. In the end, Gray could only bury all the corpses together and erect this tombstone. Walking in front of the tombstone, the eyes of the three siblings had already turned red. After placing the offerings and solemnly placing the head of King of Assassins Theodore, the three of them couldn't hold it in any longer, their voices filled with grief. Father, Mother, do you see this? This is the head of King of Assassins Theodore. Gray has already avenged you. The three of them were heartbroken like injured children, crying bitterly. Over the years, the three of them who had lost their loved ones forced themselves to be strong because they knew that only by being strong could the Sidney family rise again and not disappoint their parents. But now, under their parents' tombstones, they were once again children who could cry in their parents' arms. They all wanted to return to the past, but unfortunately, time couldn't be reversed. Gray didn't say anything to console them because he knew that the three of them carried too much on their shoulders and accumulated too much pressure. Crying bitterly was most appropriate for the three of them. The Jensen family was an ancient family that had existed since the founding of the Flame Kingdom. They were enfeoffed by the Flame Kingdom as the Marquis family and were highly regarded by the Flame Kingdom. 3 days after the destruction of the Flame Kingdom, several people took advantage of the night to visit this family. Your Highness Hu Kylie. Marquis Jensen was a middle-aged man. Although he was actually over 50 years old, because he was a desolate blood warrior, time didn't leave too many traces on his face. His hair was reddish-brown and slightly curly. His face was dry and stiff, giving off the feeling of inflexibility, stubbornness, and inflexibility. When the three kingdoms besieged the Flame Kingdom, he didn't go to the capital and instead found a secluded place to hide. It was because of this that he managed to escape with his life and wasn't killed by the three kingdoms when the capital of the Flame Kingdom was breached. Knowing that someone had come to visit, he came to the living room. When he saw the visitor take off her cloak, he was startled. It was a young woman with blonde hair that reached her waist. Her facial features were exquisite and her figure was slender. However, her face was slightly pale and her clothes were stained. This person was the only remaining princess of the Flame Kingdom, Her Highness Hu Kylie. The Flame Kingdom had 2 princes and 1 princess. The 2 princes had died at the hands of Gray, and the only princess left was this person in front of him. Marquis Jensen, the Flame Kingdom has already perished. I am no longer a princess. Hu Kylie bitterly shook her head. Sensing that the palace's defensive barrier wouldn't be able to withstand the attacks of the three kingdoms, her father, the king of the Flame Kingdom, Modi Flame, had secretly sent her out of the palace. It was because of this that she was able to survive until now. Whether the Flame Kingdom perishes or not, you will always be the princess of the Jensen family. Marquis Jensen's eyes flickered and his voice was resolute. He then glanced at Hu Kylie and said in a gentle voice, "Looking at your Highness' condition, you must not have rested well these past few days. If you don't mind, please stay in the Jensen family for the time being. The Jensen family has a few secret manners that definitely won't be discovered by the three kingdoms. I will send you there tomorrow." Marquis Jensen, thank you. Hu Kylie's eyes instantly became wet. These past few days, she had visited a few of her most loyal families. Unfortunately, none of them were willing to shelter her. She was on the verge of despair. The Jensen family was the last family. If even the Jensen family wasn't willing to shelter her, she didn't know where to go. Fortunately, the royal family's trust in the Jensen family wasn't wasted. She finally received shelter and shelter. Even if I have to give up this old life, I will definitely protect the last bloodline of the Flame Kingdom. Marquis Jensen's tone was sincere. It was as stubborn as his face, or rather, he was loyal. It was already late at night. Marquis Jensen's eldest son, a man close to 30 years old, gently pushed open the door and walked in before gently closing the door. The news has already been spread? Marquis Jensen raised his head and looked at his eldest son as he asked. It has already been spread. Father, aren't we going too far? After all, the Flame Kingdom placed great importance on the Jensen family. The eldest son couldn't bear to do so. In truth, a day ago, people from the three kingdoms had arrived at the Jensen family and asked them to maintain the order of the territory and wait for the three kingdoms to take it over. Although they couldn't keep their original titles, they would still be given a title. Moreover, if they contributed, they would be given a higher title. As for his father, after Hu Kylie, the only bloodline of the Flame Kingdom, had arrived, he had actually coaxed her to stay while reporting to the three kingdoms. In his eyes, this was simply too much. The Flame Kingdom had already been destroyed, so it was understandable for them to join the three kingdoms. However, to actually hit the only bloodline of the Flame Kingdom while they were down, it was simply too heartless. Idiot, who do you think I'm doing this for? Isn't it for the entire Jensen family and for you, who will inherit the title in the future? Marquis Jensen coldly looked at his eldest son as he coldly reprimanded. Even if we don't do this, the other families will. Since that's the case, it's better for us to benefit. A cloaked man was crawling on the wall facing the window like a gecko. Hearing the conversation between the father and son, his face was filled with anger and grief. However, he resisted the urge to make a sound and quietly slid down, avoiding the servants in the castle as he headed towards the bedroom that the Jensen family had arranged for Hukaili. What? The Jensen family betrayed us and secretly reported us to the Three Kingdoms. After so many days, Hukaili, who was sleeping soundly for the first time, was woken up by the man. Hearing this shocking news, she was instantly stunned. Only after a while did she react. Her face was filled with shock. The sincere Marquis Jensen, not long ago, had actually betrayed them. Your Highness, we can't stay in the Jensen castle any longer. We have to leave as soon as possible. The man's face was filled with grief and anger. Just in case, he had been monitoring Marquis Jensen. However, he didn't expect that the other party was even more shameless than the family they had met a few days ago. Suddenly, blood-curdling screams resounded. These were the screams of people on the brink of death. Their screams were extremely mournful, especially in the middle of the night. Obviously, some force had infiltrated the Jensen family and was trying to kill them. Could it be that the people from the Three Kingdoms have already arrived? No, that can't be right. Even if it's the people from the Three Kingdoms, they shouldn't have made a move against the Jensen family. Just which force did they come from? Hearing the sounds of killing outside, Hukaili and the others retracted their grief and anger, and their faces were filled with doubt. It didn't seem like the people from the Three Kingdoms had arrived. Chapter 572. Puff, puff, puff. Heads flew up one after another, and corpses fell down one after another. Blood spurted out like a fountain, splashing a few meters high and splattering on the walls, flowers and trees, dyeing them a strange red color. The Jensen family was a family with 1,000 years of history. Although it was the Marquis family, it was different from the Marquis family of the Purple Moon, Scarlet, and Gem Kingdoms. This family had once produced a king-class expert. Although it had been 400 years since Marquis Jensen's generation had given birth to a king-class expert, it was undeniable that this family had a strong foundation. Adding on the fact that when the Three Kingdoms besieged the Flame Kingdom, this family had sensed danger and cleverly did not participate. This caused the family's battle power to be almost unharmed. But now, this family was being massacred because of one person, a man with a yellow mask. The yellow-masked man, exhilarating, was strolling in the castle of the Jensen family. The castle guards and members of the Jensen family who were attacking him were easily chopped in half by the saber in his hand. Blood dyed the castle red. Under the night sky, it looked very eerie. "Who are you?" Marquis Jensen and his eldest son, who were having a secret conversation in the study, rushed over and looked at the man who appeared in the castle. "Someone who wants to borrow something from you." The man's face under the yellow mask faintly smiled. However, with the corpses under his feet and the bloody blade in his hand, he did not seem like someone who wanted to borrow something. He was Derek from the Fifth Faction. In order to quickly plunder enough resources to restore the magic light rank, he and the other three had split up and plundered the nobles of the Flame Kingdom. "What do you want to borrow?" Derek did not emit any aura, but Marquis Jensen felt a fatal danger. He asked with a grave expression. "All the wealth of your family." The man looked at Marquis Jensen indifferently, causing his breathing to quicken as if he was about to suffocate. "Sir, I know you're powerful, but don't you think you're going too far?" Marquis Jensen's face turned green and white. Wealth was the foundation of a family. If a family lost all of its wealth, then it would be destroyed in the next moment. Going too far? Maybe, but so what? Derek smiled disdainfully, not minding it at all. His gaze swept across the surroundings. Those who met his gaze could not help but tremble and lower their heads. They were already terrified of him. Seeing that he had intimidated everyone, Derek opened his mouth to speak. You don't have to feel indignant. My ultimate goal is the Purple Moon Scarlet Gem Kingdom. Now that you've contributed all your wealth, you've done your part in avenging the Flame Kingdom. It would be best if the other party could take the initiative to hand over all of his belongings. This would save him a lot of time and effort, so Derek revealed his intentions. He was not afraid that the Purple Moon, Scarlet, and Gem nations would find out. The relationship between the Fifth Force and the three nations had long been like fire and water, so he was not afraid that the three nations would find out about his intentions. I understand. Marquis Jensen's expression changed again and again. In the end, he let out a helpless sigh and said to Derek, "Come with me, I'll bring you to the secret room. Lead the way." Derek glanced at Marquis Jensen's hand, which was almost covered by his sleeve, and gave a playful smile as he walked towards Marquis Jensen. At that moment, Marquis Jensen, who had turned around to lead the way, suddenly turned around and a copper-colored metal cylinder with natural patterns appeared in his hand. He aimed it at Derek and activated it. As a family that had once produced a king-class expert, the family naturally had a forbidden artifact. The other party was very powerful. He could feel that if the other party wanted a portion of his wealth, he would have reluctantly given it to him. However, the other party wanted all of his wealth, so he could not hand it over no matter what. This was because the Jensen family's lifeblood. Without that wealth, the Jensen family would definitely decline. Thus, he used a forbidden artifact to launch a sneak attack. The copper-colored cylinder was only slightly longer than a palm and could be held with one hand. It looked very ordinary, but the moment it was activated, it exploded with a terrifying power. The black shadow turned into an extremely condensed arrow that carried a dangerous aura as it attacked Derek. This was the Blood Beast ability of the Jensen family's king-class expert from 400 years ago. The terrifying battle strength of a king-class expert was condensed into this arrow. Once it exploded, even a king-class expert would find it difficult to dodge. However, when faced with such a black arrow that was condensed from shadow matter, Derek's eyes were filled with disdain and mockery. He reached out a hand and easily blocked the arrow that was shot over. The arrow exploded in his hand, and a terrifying shockwave swept out. However, he did not move at all. Instead, it was Marquis Jensen and the other members of the Jensen family who had shot the arrow that were sent flying by the shockwave. Some of the weaker ones were even killed on the spot. He had long since seen Marquis Jensen's little trick, but he did not care. In front of absolute power, all calculations were useless. He had reached the pinnacle of the third metamorphosis realm, so he was confident in himself. As long as he did not meet a freak like Grey Fergus or Diphony Violet who had a gold-grade weapon, he did not think that anyone would be able to scheme against him. That was indeed the case. Xiao Chun easily blocked the attack from the forbidden tool that the other party was so confident in. How can he be so strong? Marquis Jensen, who was heavily injured and could not crawl up for a moment, looked at the uninjured Derek with a face full of shock. Just how strong was he to be able to withstand a king-class expert's attack without any injuries? Derek clearly did not have any interest in answering him. He instantly appeared beside Marquis Jensen and waved his long blade, sending a head flying. At the moment of his death, Marquis Jensen was able to see his lower body from an angle that was normally difficult to do. Looks like I'll have to find it myself. Some of the members of the Jensen family were already scared out of their wits and scrambled to escape. Derek did not have any intention of chasing after them. He was already tired of killing. Activating a ring in his hand, he began to search for the secret chamber of the Jensen family. Is your target really the Three Kingdoms? At this moment, a woman's voice sounded. He turned his head and saw a golden-haired woman walking towards him, ignoring the people around her who were trying to stop her. That is indeed the case. So what? Derek looked at the woman with interest. The existence of the other party naturally could not escape his senses as a king-class expert. He had already discovered them, but what surprised him was that the woman did not run away after seeing him kill so many people. "I have the resources you want." The woman's eyes were slightly red as she stared at Derek without any fear. There was a trace of madness in her eyes. These people were Kylie and the others who had almost been sold by the Jensen family. When they found out that the Jensen family had been attacked, they wanted to take the opportunity to escape, but in the end they could not resist and came to check. It was during this process that Kylie heard about Derek's target. It was as if she had been tempted by the devil and could no longer move. "Oh, you have it?" Derek looked at Kylie in amusement. This was the first time someone had taken the initiative to give him resources. However, he did not take it seriously because the amount of resources he needed was simply too large. He did not think that a woman like her could provide it. "Sir, do you have enough?" "I have 2 more rune space bags like this." Gritting her teeth, Kylie respectfully handed over a rune space bag. Derek took it and used his blood energy to check inside. The next moment, his pupils shrank as he looked at Kylie in shock. "Good, very good. With the resources you provide, I believe that I will soon be able to take action against the 3 kingdoms." There were more resources in the rune portal bag than he had expected. It was even more than what he had obtained in the treasure vault of the King of Flames. Since a woman had so much wealth, he had a rough idea of the woman's identity. Hearing Derek's words, Kylie's eyes were filled with morbid excitement. She had also guessed the other party's identity. Only the mysterious Fifth Force dared to say that they would take action against the 3 kingdoms. In the end, this deal was not made known to outsiders. Derek did not care, but Kylie cared. Everyone in the castle was killed by Kylie. When the 3 kingdoms received the news and rushed over, they saw a castle full of corpses. A few days later, the division of the Flame Kingdom's territory was finally settled. Grey's reward was also decided by the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. Grey's title was promoted from Earl to Duke. Due to the promotion of his title, the original Earl's territory had expanded by dozens of times. It was even larger than the 3 Dukes' families. The crescent-shaped territory had become a slightly oval territory. It was filled with fertile land, lakes rich in fish, mountains rich in mineral resources, and even a few magic crystal mines. Moreover, it was an unprecedented exception in the Purple Moon Kingdom's history. All the income in this territory belonged to Grey. The Purple Moon Kingdom did not collect any taxes. It could be said that the Purple Moon Kingdom had put in a lot of effort to reward Grey this time. Of course, the Purple Moon Kingdom did not lose out either. They had divided 1/3 of the Flame Kingdom's territory, and their territory had expanded by almost half. The benefits they had obtained were immeasurable. Other than that, Grey had also obtained a large amount of wealth from the Flame Kingdom's royal family's treasury. This amount of wealth was not small, and it did not go through the Purple Moon Kingdom's hands. Instead, it was decided by the 3 kingdoms. Unlike the Purple Moon Kingdom, the Crimson Kingdom and the Gemstone Kingdom could not reward Grey like the Purple Moon Kingdom. The Crimson Kingdom and the Gemstone Kingdom could only make an issue out of the wealth of the Raging Flame Kingdom's treasury and sell Grey a favor. Grey's current strength made them wary, so they used this method to curry favor. Chapter 573. Ever since Grey had received the title of Duke, the number of visitors to the Fergus family had never stopped. Almost every day, there would be many high-class carriages parked in the Fergus Castle Square. Some were exquisite, some were elegant, and some were filled with a noble aura. The owners of the carriages were all high-ranking nobles of the kingdom, as well as the chairmen of super merchant guilds with branches all over the country. Every single one of them was someone who could shake the Purple Moon Kingdom with just a stomp of their feet. They all brought carefully prepared gifts and lowered their statuses to their doorstep. The people of the Fergus family were shocked at first, but they soon became numb. When they first met these important people, they were a little nervous. They were afraid that if they didn't take care of them well, they would be displeased. However, as they met more and more people, they were surprised to find that they were unusually calm when they saw these important people. It had to be said that humans were very adaptable. From these visitors, they learned about Grey's achievements in the Flame Kingdom and the origin of Grey's title of Duke. Shock, uncontrollable shock. Now, not only did Grey have the power of a king, but he was also one of the strongest kings. He understood why these people had come to visit him so humbly. At the same time, a deep sense of pride grew in their hearts. It wasn't just the Fergus family. All the families related to the Fergus family were also very busy. Among them, the most popular were the two families that were related to the Fergus family by marriage, the Evelyn family and the Carlisle family. At the Fergus family's level, only the high-ranking nobles and chairmen of large merchant guilds with influence all over the country had the right to make friends with them. Small nobles and chairmen of small merchant guilds were no longer qualified to make friends with them. It wasn't that the Fergus family had become snobbish after their status rose because of Grey and refused to make friends with small nobles and chairmen of merchant guilds. Instead, there was a hidden rule that restricted these small nobles and merchant guilds, preventing them from visiting the Fergus family. Apart from the small nobles and merchant guilds that had long been friends with the Fergus family, any other small nobles and merchant guilds that broke this hidden rule would immediately be ostracized and suppressed by the larger nobles and merchant guilds. This was a world with a strict hierarchy. The hierarchy between the great nobles and the small nobles, between the great merchants and the small merchants, had long been engraved in their bones. Imagine if a big noble or a president of a big chamber of commerce was sitting in the Fergus family's living room. At this time, a president of a small noble or a small chamber of commerce came and sat in the Fergus family's living room as if they were on the same level as them. Would these small nobles and presidents of small chamber of commerce have a good time? These small nobles and companies couldn't visit the Fergus family, so they turned their attention to the families close to the Fergus family. The Evelyns family and the Carlisle family, who were related to the Fergus family by marriage, were naturally the best choices. "Father, you made the right choice," a 30-year-old brown-haired man excitedly said to Viscount Evelyns. When he learned that his father was going to marry his sister to Bernal Fergus and form a marriage alliance with the Fergus family, he didn't agree. The marriage alliance between nobles was a combination of benefit. At that time, the Fergus family's heir was Grey Fergus. Although Bernal Fergus was the eldest son, he didn't have the right to inherit the title. From his point of view, the benefits he could obtain from this marriage alliance were limited. However, at that time, his father stood his ground against everyone's opinions and led the marriage alliance between the Evelyns family and the Fergus family. This caused a lot of dissatisfaction in the family. After that, the Fergus family was promoted to a count family. This dissatisfaction gradually disappeared. When Grey Fergus left the Fergus family and was in theft as a count of the kingdom, and Bernal Fergus became the heir to the title again, the dissatisfaction completely disappeared. Everyone started to praise their father's decision to marry Grey Fergus. Now, those who had stopped the marriage alliance were all glad that they didn't ruin this marriage alliance. Otherwise, they would become the sinners of the family, and the Evelyns family would never be able to reach its current status. Similar words also happened in the Carlisle family. It could be said that after Grey was in theft as a duke, all the families related to the Fergus family received a lot of benefit. In the forest near the Fergus castle, which was known as the forbidden area of the Fergus family, a giant beast with a body length of more than 20 meters stood in the middle of the forest. The giant beast looked like a lizard, covered in black scales. Its huge body was several stories tall, and its long tail was full of barbs. The giant beast's teeth looked extremely sharp. Each one of them was like a sword, shining with a cold white light. Its sharp claws had 3 toes, and they were completely black. They shone with a black metallic light, like the claws of an excavator. The entire beast looked like a fighting machine, and all the structures on its body seemed to be made for battle. This was the magic light level demon poison dragon beast. When one reached the king level, they had to start practicing the Thunder Lizard Sequence's magic light level blood arts. However, Gray didn't have the Thunder Lizard Sequence's magic light level blood arts. Instead, he had the Poison Lizard Sequence's magic light level blood arts. Therefore, he switched to the Poison Lizard Sequence's magic light level blood arts. After a short while, Gray finished his training. Barbara, who was wearing a high-end silk lotus leaf lace dress that showed off her curvaceous figure, gently handed him a wet towel. Gray reached out to take it and wiped the sweat off his forehead. During this period of time, although there were many higher nobles and chairmen of major merchant guilds who visited the Fergus family, he almost never appeared. Only when the siblings of the Addison family, Gavin Kenneth of the Kenneth family, and Jessica and her sister of the Cumberland family came to visit did he personally appear. There were simply too many powers that came to visit. He didn't have the energy or time to meet them one by one. At his level of strength, there was no need to deliberately make friends with any particular power. From his point of view, although these so-called friendships weren't absolutely useless, they definitely wouldn't occupy a dominant position. For example, how many of the Sidney family still remembered their past friendships? As long as he was there, he could guarantee the prosperity of the Fergus family for hundreds of years. If he disappeared, these so-called friendships would easily fade away. "I'm going out at noon. Tell the castle that there's no need to deliver food," Gray said after sensing something that was still lying in the purple ring. Not long after, a pair of greenish-black wings extended from his back. Gray soared into the sky and left the forest, far away from Fergus Castle. Half an hour later, he landed in a city. This was an extremely old city. The city walls were mottled and had obvious signs of weathering. The original shape of the stone walls could no longer be seen clearly. The streets of the city were paved with stone slabs that had disappeared piece by piece. Potholes could be seen in some places. Most of the residents in the city were elderly. Their expressions were somewhat numb. They had already weathered the hardships of life and were indifferent to things. This was a city that had sunk into its twilight years. The severe loss of young adults caused this city to lack vitality. Looking at this city, Gray couldn't help but think of the villages in his previous life. They had also suffered from a severe loss of young adults, leaving only a few elderly people in the village. He naturally didn't come here to improve the current situation of this city. Firstly, this city wasn't part of the Fergus family's territory. Secondly, even if it was in the Fergus family's territory, he didn't have any plans to change it. Decline and prosperity were like the life and death of humans. They were the most basic laws of nature. No city could escape from them. There was no need to interfere too much. While this city was declining, a new city would inevitably be flourishing somewhere. The reason why Gray came here was because he judged that this city had a long history. Walking in the city, a silver metal ball the size of a ping-pong ball appeared in Gray's hand. That's right, his goal this time was the Ghost Merchant. The Ghost Merchant was rumored to be a top powerhouse during the Empire. His strength was at least at the magic light level or above. The earliest records of him appeared during the Empire. There were speculations that he was related to the fall of the Empire, but Gray was skeptical. The fall of the Empire should have been caused by the power that set up the huge runic matrix. It had nothing to do with the Ghost Merchant. Of course, the Ghost Merchant was very likely to have watched the fall of the Empire without interfering in any way. It could be that the power that destroyed the Empire was too strong, making him afraid and not daring to interfere. It could also be that he had nothing to do with the Empire, so he watched everything happen indifferently. Of course, this had nothing to do with Gray. Gray's goal this time was only to make a deal with the Ghost Merchant. Generally speaking, when someone had something they wanted and appeared in a city with an extremely long history, the ghost merchant would appear. This was also the reason why Gray chose this city, because it had a long history. Gray stayed in a shabby tavern in the city and waited for the arrival of the ghost merchant. But when night fell, Gray still did not see the ghost merchant. How could this be? Is this city too small or not old enough? Gray raised his eyebrows and was puzzled. The next day, Gray left the city and went directly to the city where he first met the ghost merchant through the map. He found another hotel to stay in, but after a day, he still did not see the ghost merchant. What's going on? Gray frowned. He originally thought that it would be easy to do, but he didn't expect that after spending 2 full days, he still didn't succeed. Then, he spent a few more days going to several ancient cities. One of them was the city where he met the ghost merchant for the second time, but the ghost merchant still did not appear. He stopped searching. At this moment, he had to admit that the specter merchant had disappeared. Chapter 574. How did the spirit merchant disappear? On the way back to the Fergus family, Gray's mind spun quickly as he tried to guess the reason for the spirit merchant's disappearance. The first thing he thought of was that the spirit merchant had reached the limit of his lifespan and died in some unknown corner. Although the spirit merchant was a powerhouse of magic light or even higher, and had a long lifespan, there was definitely a limit to his lifespan. From the verifiable history, the spirit merchant was at least 1,500 years old. This age was definitely considered old even among the powerhouses of magic light. It was normal for him to die because he had reached the limit of his lifespan. Secondly, he thought that the spirit merchant had left this world for some reason. Although the forces that destroyed the Empire from 1,000 years ago had used some method to prevent the creation of magic light warriors and prevented the people of this world from leaving, the spirit merchant was not within the scope of this restriction. The spirit merchant was already a powerhouse of magic light or even higher before that. Moreover, the spirit merchant and the forces that destroyed the Empire might have reached some kind of agreement and were not targeted by the forces that destroyed the Empire. With the spirit merchant's strength, he was completely capable of breaking through the world barrier and leaving this world. However, he did not know the reason why he left this world. Speaking of which, now that I've exhausted all my means, my combat power is enough to reach the level of magic light. It's time to explore the world barrier again. The battle with Blair Blaze had convinced Gray that his combat power after using Blood Frenzy was comparable to the level of magic light. According to his initial estimation, with the combat power of magic light, he should be able to break through the world barrier. He had not thought of breaking through the world barrier and leaving this world. He still had too many attachments to this world. Now that he had a lifespan of around 300 years, his lifespan would be even longer in the future. He did not need to leave this world in a hurry. He just wanted to see if his guess was correct. After returning to the Fergus family, Gray set off for the world barrier again. Because he had been there before and had left the coordinates of the teleportation portal, he quickly arrived at the world barrier. The endless ice plains, where the ice had not melted for thousands of years, was a vast expanse of white. The color was always monotonous white. In front of it, a black sky stretched across the horizon. It was pitch black and deep like the night sky. This was the world barrier. The world barrier was a barrier that separated this world from other worlds. It was thick and heavy like a black cloud of lead. Just from its appearance, it gave people a feeling that it was indestructible. Over the past 1,000 years, many kings had tried to break through this barrier and go to other worlds. Unfortunately, they had all failed. This was why the kings called this world the Caged Land. Looking at the world barrier in front of him, Gray took a deep breath. Then, in an instant, he relied on his understanding of the law of madness to form a resonance with the law of madness in his mind. A shadow of the law of madness appeared in his body. Following that, his body began to change. The bones in his body emitted cracking sounds as they rubbed against each other, while the muscles all over his body expanded as though they were inflated with air. His clothes were torn apart, and in a short period of time, he turned into a burly man over 2 meters tall. Explosive battle power surged into his body, and a feeling of power rose in his heart. He felt that he could destroy mountains and break rivers, and that there was nothing he could not do. The sword at his waist was unsheathed, and a thick dark green mist quickly wrapped around the blue sword. When the sword was right in front of him, a dark green giant blade slashed out, slashing at the pitch-black world barrier in front of him. Pooh! Facing this magic light-level dark green fog, the world barrier was no longer as stubborn as it had been when he had first arrived. Clear scratches appeared on the surface of the black cloud of lead. However, although there were scratches, it was clear that Gray's attack had not been able to break through the world barrier. Not only that, but the scratches on the world barrier were also clearly recovering. It would not be long before it was as good as new. Of course, Gray could not let this happen. He slashed his sword again from another angle, and another dark green giant blade slashed out. This time, it slashed at the same location as before, and the scratches from before widened and deepened. Pooh! 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 Gray did not care about the depletion of his blood power. He slashed out one dark green giant blade after another, and they were all accurately controlled at the same location on the world barrier. Rip! After slashing out more than 20 dark green giant blades, just as Gray's blood power was about to be exhausted, there was a sound of cloth being torn apart, and a gap that was about a few meters long appeared. Through this gap, Gray finally saw a corner of the world barrier. Darkness and silence. Through the gap, Gray saw a dark and silent world. There was not a trace of light, and the whole world was dark. There was not a trace of sound, and the whole world was silent. This was an extremely spacious world. In this world, there were many rocks. The big ones were the size of mountains, and the small ones were only the size of footballs. They floated in the dark and silent world. Patter! The broken world barrier completely closed up, and Gray's eyes once again became a thick and heavy world barrier that was like a cloud of lead. The universe, the stars. Gray had a strange expression on his face as he dispelled his berserk state. Although he had only looked at it for a very short time, he was very sure that he had seen a scene similar to the universe in his previous life. In the dark and silent weightless space, there were meteorites of different sizes floating up and down. He did not know where they would drift to. This was a true portrayal of the universe. Of course, there were differences. In this universe, Gray did not see a single bit of starlight. This was different from the universe in his previous life. After all, there were many stars in the universe in his previous life. They would emit light, and the universe should not be completely dark. This is the world outside the world barrier? Gray's face was full of disappointment. There were no plants or animals in the vast universe, and it was very likely that there was no air. Humans could not survive in this kind of universe. At least, as a king-level expert, he could be sure that king-level experts needed to eat and breathe. They could not survive without any external conditions. That's not right. If the outside world is like this, then how did the power that destroyed the Empire 1,000 years ago survive? Gray could not help but think of the power that destroyed the Empire 1,000 years ago. It was certain that the power did not belong to this world. After the Empire was destroyed, there had been no trace of the power for 1,000 years. No matter how secretive a power was, it was impossible for it to not be discovered for 1,000 years. The only explanation was that the power did not belong to this world. Then, the living world outside this world should exist. Why is that? Gray furrowed his brows and thought hard. After a while, he thought of 3 possibilities that had a high probability of being true. The first was that this world was indeed connected to other living worlds. It was just that the place where he had broken open the world barrier was not the correct place. So, when he broke open the world barrier, what he saw was the universe and not a living world. The second conjecture was that the forces that destroyed the Empire 1,000 years ago were like the aliens in the Legends of Earth in his previous life. They had some kind of transportation that allowed them to come and go freely in the empty universe. The other party used this method to travel between their world and the current world. The third was that magic light class experts had the ability to survive in the universe. They could survive in the airless universe for long periods of time. They could even travel through the universe. Their method of travel was definitely different from that of a king-level expert. A king-level expert relied on the propulsion of the air to travel. In the airless universe, this method was obviously not possible. It's a pity that Blair Blaze died too quickly. Gray could not help but think of Blair Blaze, who had been a magic light warrior for only a few hours before dying. If Blair Blaze was still alive, he should be able to prove whether a magic light warrior had the ability to survive in the universe. Of course, this was just a thought. Even if he was given another chance, he would not hesitate to kill Blair Blaze. He would never imprison him or anything like that. That would be too dangerous. After Blair Blaze recovered from his injuries, it was very likely that he would die from the backlash. First, I'll confirm whether or not there is air in the universe. Then, I'll verify the first guess. Although he had 3 guesses, 2 of them could not be confirmed. Only the first one could be confirmed. Gray was prepared to confirm whether or not there was air in the universe. Then, he would try to break open the world barrier from different directions to verify the first guess. Half a day later, after his blood energy had recovered, Gray caught a blood fiend and began to break open the world barrier once more. Rip! With the sound of tearing cloth, the world barrier was broken open by Gray once more. At this moment, Blair Blaze, who had become Gray's puppet, grabbed a living blood fiend with both hands and quickly threw it into the opening. After dispelling Berserk, Gray stared at the blood fiend without blinking. After being thrown into the universe, the blood fiend began to struggle violently in panic and fear. The blood fiend opened its mouth and roared violently. Unfortunately, Gray could not hear a single sound. Its 4 limbs and body shook violently, but it was unable to control its body. It could only move in the direction Blair Blaze had thrown it. At the same time, its body rapidly shriveled, visibly thinning. In just a few seconds, it was as if it had been starved for 10 days to half a month. Pata! The world barrier closed once more. Gray was unable to see the blood fiend's final outcome, but he could already guess that death was the end of this blood fiend. Chapter 575. As expected, there is no air. Based on the changes that occurred after the blood fiends entered the cosmic space, Gray was very sure that there was no air in the cosmic space. In the cosmic space, he could clearly see the blood fiends roaring in terror, but he couldn't hear them. This was because there was no medium for transmission, which meant that there was no air. The rapid thinning and shriveling of the blood fiends also proved this point. Because there was no air, there was no pressure. In a pressure-free state, the water in the blood fiends' bodies was rapidly evaporating, which was why they became so thin and shriveled. There is no air in the cosmic space. This has been confirmed. Next, I have to verify if the world behind the world barrier is connected to the living world. After a short rest, Gray began to circle around the world barrier. Every few thousand miles, he would break the world barrier to check. This was destined to be a long and time-consuming process, but the one thing that Gray didn't lack now was time. In a secret manor in the western city of the former Flame Kingdom, this was a foothold of the 5th faction in the former Flame Kingdom. In a training room, the floor was paved with gems, precious jewelry, and magic items. The entire floor was covered with a layer of gems, precious jewelry, and magic items, making the entire training room look colorful. In the middle of the training room, a middle-aged man with a chiseled face sat cross-legged on top of the jewelry. Behind him, a white shadow appeared. This was an extremely strange white shadow. It looked like 2 snakes entangled with each other. Their heads and tails were connected, and the snake head was biting the other's tail, swallowing a portion of the other's tail into its own body. As this white shadow appeared, the surrounding jewelry, and all kinds of magic weapons all had white mist floating out, quickly gathering into the middle-aged man's body. As this white mist floated out, the original jewelry and magic weapons quickly turned gray. In an instant it was as if thousands of years had passed, and their original luster had been worn away by time. The originally rare items were no different from ordinary stones and iron. In contrast, the middle-aged man's aura was slowly becoming stronger. It had already surpassed the peak of the third metamorphosis, but it was still climbing. As time passed, there were fewer and fewer colorful jewelry and magic weapons in the training room. Finally, at some point, there was nothing left. All of them had turned gray. The middle-aged man's aura had finally broken through some kind of bottleneck. In an instant, it gushed out and rippled in all directions. Then, it quickly converged and disappeared without a trace. Success! In the manner, Merrill, Faust, and Chaucer couldn't help but look in the direction of the training room. They quickly rushed there. When they arrived at the door of the cultivation room, they saw the middle-aged man, Derek, open the door and walk out of the cultivation room. "Yeah, I've finally recovered to magic light level." Derek nodded. During this period of time, he had used up all the resources that the four of them had plundered. In addition to the large amount of resources that Hukaili had provided, he had finally recovered his magic light realm. "Congratulations, my lord." The golden-haired Hukaili hurried over. Her face was filled with excitement. The excitement on her face was even greater than the four from the fifth force. Her eyes were bloodshot and filled with morbid excitement. Revenge for the Flame Kingdom could finally be avenged. A magic light warrior was definitely the strongest fighting force in this world. Whether it was Dyphony Violet, who had a gold-grade weapon, or Grey Fergus, who relied on his blood skill to temporarily increase his strength to magic light, none of them could compare to a true magic light warrior. According to the information she had received, she was certain that Sir Burrell had lost because he didn't understand the two of them and because he was careless. However, the fifth force, who had already received information, obviously wouldn't be so. No one in the three kingdoms could stop the fifth force. As long as the fifth force made a move, the three kingdoms would be destroyed. "My lord, which kingdom do you plan to attack first?" Hukaili's voice trembled with excitement. "That's not something you can know." Derek frowned slightly and glanced at Hukaili. Then, he turned and walked towards the meeting room with the other three from the fifth force. The three behind him glanced at Hukaili with contempt. Before leaving, the beautiful Merrill patted Hukaili's face and shook her head with a sneer. "Since you're a dog that was picked up, you should act like one. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask." The fifth force's cold attitude could even be called contempt. It was like a splash of cold water on Hukaili and the members of the Flame Kingdom's royal family who followed her. Seeing their highness being looked down upon, the members of the Flame Kingdom's royal family, who followed Hukaili, couldn't help but clench their fists. They tried their best to suppress the anger in their hearts. Only when the four of them had walked far away did one of the elders sigh. "Your Highness, is it really right to cooperate with them? So what if they're dogs? As long as I can avenge the Flame Kingdom, I'm willing to be treated as a dog." Hukaili's eyes were scarlet and her expression was sickly. "But I'm worried that they won't keep their promise and attack the three kingdoms." The elder was worried. "No, they will definitely attack the three kingdoms because the three kingdoms have the resources they want." Hukaili's lips curled into a cold smile. She wasn't worried that Derek wouldn't attack the three kingdoms as promised after becoming a magic light warrior. During this period of time in this manner, it wasn't that she didn't gain anything. At least she understood one thing. For some reason, the fifth force needed a terrifying amount of resources, and the only ones who could afford it were the royal families of the three kingdoms. Therefore, it was inevitable that they would attack the three kingdoms. Flying around the world barrier, several days passed in the blink of an eye. During these few days, Gray broke through the world barrier many times, but all he saw was the lonely starry sky of the universe without exception. In front of him, near the world barrier, a tattered piece of white cloth was hanging on an icy green plant. It fluttered in the wind and attracted Gray's attention. In this region near the world barrier, any unnatural product was rare. Gray descended from the sky and reached out to pluck this piece of white cloth. It was a white silk fabric, probably an extremely high-grade silk. However, Gray didn't have much understanding in this area, so he didn't know what kind of silk it was. Looks familiar? On the tattered white cloth, there were lilac jasmine flowers embroidered one after another. Seeing this piece of cloth, Gray felt that it was vaguely familiar. He was very sure that he had seen this material before, but he couldn't remember where he had seen it at the moment. White with lilac jasmine flowers embroidered on it. It should have been torn from a woman's clothes. A woman I know. Gray filtered through the women he had seen or knew in his mind. In an instant, the image of a woman appeared in his mind. The woman had a slender figure and was dressed in tight clothes. Her legs were firm and tight under the tight clothes, and her figure was exquisite and undulating under the tight clothes. In front of the woman floated a golden blade without a handle. The blade's surface was full of beautiful patterns, and the woman was wearing a white mask. The mask was made of the same material as the one in his hand. This woman was the only woman among the 4 members of the Fifth Force, but she had never worn a mask since her identity was exposed in the battle with him. Why did she come here? Throwing away the tattered cloth, Gray was puzzled. Why did the woman come here? Perhaps it wasn't just the woman, but the other 3 members of the Fifth World might have come here with her. In Gray's opinion, the Fifth Force was a very strange force, and even made him faintly feel that it was a force of danger. There was no trace of them before they stole the treasuries of the 4 kingdoms, but they suddenly appeared, and all of them displayed extraordinary defensive power. According to the previous battle with the 4 of them in the Flame Kingdom's royal treasury, their defensive power should have reached the magic light level. This was very inconceivable to him. No matter how strong or weak the 4 of them were, they all had magic light level defensive power. This was very strange. Even if they had some kind of special magic potion to enhance their physical fitness, it should be very difficult for them to do so. After all, it was magic light level. Even if their physical body had reached it, it was very unbelievable, and there were 4 of them. In addition, the speed of their strength increase was also very strange. The speed of their strength increase was actually not inferior to his. He could have such a fast speed of improvement because of his transformation ability. Then, why could the other party's speed of improvement be so fast? Those people can't be? Gray looked at the neighboring world's barrier with a sharp look in his eyes, as if he could see through the world's barrier and see what was behind it. He used the blood skill Berserk, and his body quickly expanded and became burly. Soon, he became more than 2 meters tall. Because it was inconvenient to use Berserk when he was wearing ordinary clothes, he was wearing a black battlesuit. Clang! The sword at his waist was unsheathed, and in the next moment, a dark green giant blade slashed out and slashed on the world's barrier, leaving a clear mark on it. Poof! 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 The dark green giant blade slashed out continuously, and slashed at the same place on the world's barrier. The mark on the world's barrier became deeper and deeper, and finally, at a certain moment, rip! Like a piece of cloth being torn, a gap appeared on the world's barrier, and the world behind the gap appeared in front of Gray's eyes. It was no longer the dark and silent universe, but a dry desert. Large and small mountain rocks appeared in front of Gray's eyes, and they had traces of weathering. The dry and hot wind blew on Gray's face through the gap, but in the next moment the gap disappeared and the heat disappeared completely.